Ready? Thank you, Ann. Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. This is a special meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. We are live at the City Hall Commissioners Room, second floor of City Hall. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. With that, I'd like to conduct a roll call. Commissioner Tony Sharp, sorry. I saw a blank chair there, and I went blank. Tony is not here today. Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Commissioner Ed Chernowski.
Here.
Commissioner Susan Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Bennett.
Here.
And Mayor Stan Mills. We have a quorum and are able to formally conduct business today. Welcome, everybody. I'd also like to identify in the room with us participating today is City Manager, Interim City Manager, Assistant City Manager, Evan Miller, City Solicitor Glenn Mandalis, and Lauren Good from Wallace Montgomery, the CDP consultant and planning consultant. Welcome, everybody. Glad you're here. With that, I have not identified any correspondence. Is that correct? No. And we want to remind everybody the purpose of this special meeting is to review the draft comprehensive development plan as referred to the mayor and commissioners by the Planning Commission on May 13th, 2022, in order to prepare for consideration of adoption by the mayor and commissioners on or before July 29th, 2022. I'd like to start off with some background material, and actually, your best, if you're not familiar with the CDP, your best education can be received by reading the CDP. It's got a lot of fantastic information in there, including introductory information. But I also want to remind everybody that we have support documents that are available online in the legislative portal so that you can see exactly what we're seeing. Go to cityrehoboth.com. In the middle of the right side of the home page is the legislative portal. Click on that. Look for the date of the meeting you're interested in. Of course, that would be May 17th. And then look for the agenda. And in the agenda, you will find links to the CDP as well as other support documents. First, I want to call your attention to the May 16th transmittal from the Planning Commission. It is embedded in the agenda, so it's rather self-explanatory. And what I would like to do briefly is just go over a couple things. One is that on May 13th, the Planning Commission, I'm going to read from the last paragraph there. On Friday, May 13th, the Planning Commission voted unanimously 7-0 with 2 members not present on 2 motions presented. One was to forward the CDP draft number 7 to the Board of Commissioners for our consideration and review. And the second motion that passed unanimously was to recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt the CDP draft number 7 as the 2020 Comprehensive Development Plan in the City of Rehoboth Beach. With that, I want to go over into the CDP draft document itself, and I would just like to reiterate acknowledgments that are already in on page II of the introduction. It makes mention of the Board of Commissioners and others that contributed to the CDP, but I primarily wanted to highlight these names, and I value their input in their time, so I'd like to read their names individually. These are the Planning Commission members that have contributed to this draft CDP. Barry Covington, Jim Ellison, Rachel Macha, Michael Bryan, Chair, Julie Davis, Nan Hunter, John Dewey, Stephen Kaufman, and Michael Strange. Those are the most recent members. But as this process went on for several years, it also had additional 9, believe it or not, 9 Planning Commission members that contributed, and those additional contributors were David Mellon, then chair at one time, Rick Perry, then chair at one time, Jeffrey Trunzo, chair at one time, Paul Hubbard, Francis Mark Hunker, Brian Patterson, Joyce Luzier, and Lee Weber. So again, I'd like a little pat on the back for all those 18 members that worked on this from the beginning and ended up putting in front of us draft number 7. Next item I'd like to take a look at is again in the draft version 7 CDP, executive summary and vision. Very simply, it starts out with the Rehoboth Beach 2020 Comprehensive Development Plan is the city's official guide to its future. The CDP is designed to shape the city's future decisions about allocation of resources, land use and development, and other policies so that Rehoboth Beach continues its appeal and vitality in future years. With that, I'd like to skip over to Chapter 2, Introduction to the Planning Process. And again, this is just a brief education. Again, everybody should read, or at least read the introduction to start off with, and then when you have time, devote the rest of your time to the other 300 pages when you can. As described in Chapter 1, I just read the CDP is the principal document outlining city's goals and policies regarding the use of land. It is designed as a policy and action plan that should remain valid in the face of change over the years. Effectively used, CDP is the basis for decision-making at all levels of government and will guide the public and private sectors toward beneficial actions, activities affecting its land. The CDP has several purposes, and there are about a dozen bullets there that are worth reading so you have a good idea of it. The authority to plan comes from Delaware State Code. The Delaware State Code assigns responsibility for comprehensive plan preparation to the municipal planning commissions to encourage the most appropriate uses of the physical and fiscal resources of the municipality and the coordination of municipal growth, development, and infrastructure investment actions with those of other municipalities, counties, and state through a process of municipal comprehensive planning. Some additional background here. The description of a comprehensive plan and its contents are stated in state code. Comprehensive plan means a document in text and maps containing at a minimum a municipal development strategy setting forth the jurisdiction's position on population and housing growth within the jurisdiction, expansion of its boundaries, development of adjacent areas, redevelopment potential, community character, and the general uses of land within the community, and critical community development and infrastructure issues. The comprehensive planning process shall demonstrate coordination with other municipalities, the county, and the state during plan preparation. Once adopted, comprehensive plans must be reviewed every 5 years as stated in Section 702 of the State Code. Quote, at least every 5 years, a municipality shall review its adopted comprehensive plan to determine if its provisions are still relevant given changing conditions in the municipality or in the surrounding area. The adopted comprehensive plan shall be revised, updated, and amended as necessary and readopted at least every 10 years, provided, however, the municipality may request an extension of such date, et cetera. I'm reading from page 2-3. And just a reminder that, of course, this is not our first CDP. So we are under the 10-year review. In state law, it also requires that annual reports be made and describing implementation of the comprehensive plan and identifying development issues, trends, or conditions since the plan was last adopted or amended. The report shall be due annually, no later than each anniversary of the effective date, and some other dates are given here. Finally, at the bottom of the paragraph, skip over a few areas, it says the CDP is a legal document. The Delaware Code specifies that any incorporated municipality under this chapter shall prepare a comprehensive plan for the city or town or portions thereof as the commission deems appropriate. The code further specifies that after a comprehensive plan or portion thereof has been adopted by the municipality in accordance with this chapter, the comprehensive plan shall have the force of law and no development shall be permitted except as consistent with the plan. I did the emphasis there, of course. And again, I want to say that after adopted, the comprehensive plan shall have the force of law, and no development shall be permitted except as consistent with the plan. What I'd like to do is further pause for a clarification and have Glenn explain to us force of law. Here, we're going to be looking through the CDP at one point in its entirety. And there are different actions and goals in here. So, Glenn, if you could give us a summary, maybe incorporated the following. What is the force of law relative to land use? Force of law relative to non-land use issues? There are goals and actions in here. What is the difference with respect to force of law? There is specific wording, for instance, that was changed in the most recent versions from versions 6 and 7, where some of the actions say contract with somebody, and then the next version says consider contracting with somebody. Like that, and then must-dos and aspirational things, if you would.
So as the mayor said, the CDP does have the force of law, and we've learned now over the past decade to 15 years what that means. There was a period of time where we struggled with to what extent does it actually have the force of law. So there's been case law now demonstrating what that means. For example, there was a case in Kent County where a developer, the county comp plan anticipated a change of zone for a certain property. The county didn't change that zoning designation within 18 months, which is the requirement under state law, or they didn't even act on changing that zoning within that 18 months. And a developer came in and brought an application that was consistent with the CDP, but wasn't consistent with the county code because the code hadn't been changed yet. And the court ultimately ruled that because the county failed to change their zoning as the comp plan anticipated within that 18 months, they had the developer's plan had to be approved because it was consistent with the comp plan. And the county didn't take the action it was supposed to take. So these words, force of law, have real meaning. The document is, in some ways, should be considered, well, as the mayor said, it's a legal document. It's not codified code in our city code, but it has real legal ramifications. So when you're working through the document, words have meaning, and we need to be careful about what we're saying. So when the mayor says some things say contract, other things say consider contracting. Consider contracting, to my mind, is an aspirational goal. It's something that the city should take up at some point and consider doing it, but doesn't ultimately have to. Where the document says shall do or will do, those are meaningful words. The municipal comp plans are different than county comp plans. I still don't know why exactly this distinction was made in the state law, but in the state law, county comp plans specifically says in Title IX that county comp plans, just the maps have the force of law. But with municipal comp plans, the language in the state law doesn't distinguish between the text of the plan and the maps of the plan. So the entire document has the force of law. It's only been tested, I think, in the context of land use. So land use, the comprehensive development plan is really about land use. And the force of law language it appears, in the land use sections of state code, and that's where I've seen it applied or challenged in state courts. So the land use portion, you really have to be careful about the language being used in the context of force of law. So I hope, Mayor, maybe that covered it. If there are other questions that I can answer, I will. I just want to sort of set the table that this document is not just entirely aspirational. This force of law has been challenged now. We've started to learn about what it means, and it's not just pie in the sky. It's the real thing, and courts consider it that way. Courts have said that the document is there's going to be portions of the document that can be everything in the document is not going to be consistent. There can be competing goals within the document, and the courts have said that's not a problem. The document, though, is a roadmap for the future. So while the city can recognize this is an area that we should focus on, and it can also recognize that there's another area that should be focused on, and some of those goals are not entirely consistent, the court says it's going to look at the document on a whole. It's not going to look at the document in a vacuum, and it's going to say what are the overall goals of the city, and does a land use application, is a land use application consistent with the plan. It doesn't have to be exactly consistent. It can be, looked at holistically. Is it consistent?
Thank you, Glenn. I don't, if there are no questions, I'd just like to comment that to me, this is very important for us to understand because as we go through here, the wording and wordsmithing is super important, as Glenn said. One of the examples I always chuckle at, I guess, from the last CDP, being touted as you having to maintain the force of law, is that in the last CDP, it mentions that all those little crosswalk buttons for the pedestrian crossings shall or should have arrows put on them. And I'm thinking, with the force of law, what does that mean? Are we going to be arrested if we don't put those arrows on those crosswalks, kind of a thing? So I do find it interesting, and I think we do need to be very deliberate as we go through here on what shall do and will do, and versus the word consider. When we get into land use chapter, I want to further expand on what land use means, so we'll get into definitions later. I would like to remind everybody that we have a timeline and deadline for this. We have to adopt by ordinance the CDP by July 29th, correct? We need to submit to the state on or before the 29th, or I think it's also, I think that might also be the 29th that we have to submit it. So, or else it's July 30th. So we need to check on that. I need to check on that. I do intend to conduct a public hearing, and that would precede the July 29th deadline. And that was to give everybody, the public, the last opportunity to be able to speak. Of course, we're going to advertise these meetings on and off, and the public still has opportunity to speak up from now till then. If this version 7 of the CDP or version 8, whatever we come up with, if any future version needs to be resubmitted to the plus, that submittal deadline is June 1st. And so I guess I'd like to turn to Lauren again to help educate us and remind us of what is the plus group, period. What is it? We know we've already been in front of plus. We could explain what that is. And then in looking at version 7 or any future version, what would make us need to resubmit, if anything? Is there something that rises to a level that makes us resubmit to plus? Because we've just indicated, if so, we have a very tight timeline of June 1st to make that submittal. Are there alternatives to submitting something to plus? In other words, can we, if we find something somewhat important, can we decide to omit it from the CDP? And then therefore, that maybe leads into a quick review of what must be in a CDP. Because not everything in here is a must have. We do a good job of going beyond it with very good information. So we could turn to you, Lauren, for some of that, plus what would make us resubmit. Are there alternatives, and what must be in a CDP?
Thank you. PLUS is the preliminary land use service, and it is coordinated by the Office of State Planning Coordination, but it is basically a group of state agencies that make up this review body. They not only look at all of the comprehensive plans that are being updated, they offer a chance to submit existing plans for a pre-update review. And this group also reviews development applications that are above a certain size threshold, or if there is a memorandum of understanding between a municipality or the county and the state, they will also undertake those reviews as well. The body is made up of state planning, DELDOT, DENREC, Department of Agriculture, Fire Marshal's Office, Historic Preservation. No, I'm leaving some of those out, so I apologize for those that I have. But this group meets once a month to review the applications that are submitted. As the mayor mentioned, those applications have to be submitted on the first business day of the month in order to be scheduled for that month's review, which is why the timing of any submission to them is so important. Their meetings are held toward the end of the month, and after that meeting, which is more of a it's a verbal dialogue with some unofficial comments. Those agencies pull all of their comments together, and within 20 working days of that meeting, a response letter is submitted back to the applicant. So it does take about 2 months to get through that process, assuming all goes well. So we had done that back in February 1st, when we released draft number 5. We simultaneously submitted that to PLUS for their review, as well as the neighboring municipalities and Sussex County for their review and comment. We held that meeting with the PLUS agencies later that month and received back documentation from them. The document that we got back from them was, about 11 pages long, which is a normal length to get back. Out of the items that we received, 3 of those have to be addressed in some shape or form in order to meet certification requirements. So these are items that directly relate to something that is in state law that has to be addressed in order to meet that minimum threshold for the governor to certify the CDP. Perhaps the easiest way to respond to what triggers a resubmittal is to say what doesn't, and that is a response to any of the comments contained in the PLUS letter that we received. So if there is a new language developed, or replacing language, or expanding, or modifying something that's in the draft number 5 that they reviewed, as long as we can make an argument that the changes directly address one of those comments, that negates the need to go back to the full PLUS board for them to review any of those changes. Basically, what that resubmittal process is trying to do is to ensure that there aren't significant changes that happen between when those agencies reviewed the initial draft and when it gets adopted. So they want to ensure that any changes aren't going against state law or aren't contradicting something from a neighboring plan, or contrary to general best practices, for example. When we think about what might trigger resubmittal, these are going to be things that have some sort of material change to the draft. So if we are changing something that is opposite of what was in the earlier draft, that's something that could trigger it. If we are proposing a new policy that is has wider ranging impacts, or certainly something that would impact either the county or the neighboring municipality, so something more of a regional nature, that's something that could potentially trigger that re-review. If there is something that, for example, the future land use map, if there are wide-ranging changes to that, a neighborhood that shows up as residential on the current draft and it changes to commercial, that's something that these are very obvious red flags that will most certainly trigger that re-review. So if we can sort of scale back on those, or make sure that if there are any of those items that you do wish to see modified that could potentially trigger that, if we can identify them as soon as possible so we can confirm with state planning whether it is something that rises to that level. And then really make sure that it's something that we have to include in the plan itself. So you had, Mr. Mayor, you had mentioned the items that have to be in the plan. There are a number of items, particularly called out in Chapter 1, the executive summary, that highlights the city positions on a variety of different issues. So these are items that the Planning Commission drafted to explain what their positions were for these different areas. Each of the areas identified are a topic that the state law has highlighted as something that needs to be included in the document. We try to put these as upfront and transparent as possible so that no one is searching to find these or perhaps misinterpreting what is meant elsewhere. Along with that, we have a multi-page document from the Office of State Planning that is a guidance document or a checklist for items to be included. That changes depending on the size of the population. So Rehoboth has a population under 2,000, which is the threshold. So there are fewer requirements that the city has to meet. However, they are able to expand and address other items as they wish. So we've gone through that and made sure that we have incorporated those items that we certainly have to. And again, the certification comments that we did get back from the PLUS review were fairly minor. One was a misreference to a table that had been moved. Another was providing expanded written verification of sharing the draft with the county and neighboring jurisdictions, which we didn't have that at the time. The draft was reviewed by PLUS because we were in that process. We now have all of that documentation, and it's included in draft number 7 that you have before you. So the real item of substance as far as those certification comments reflects map number 5, which is shows the future land use and annexation growth area. This was just a comment that that state planning wanted to see future land uses identified for any areas that were designated as a potential future annexation area. So again, we worked with the Planning Commission to develop that map, and that is included in the draft for your review. I think that hit all of your questions, but please let me know if not, and I can provide more information.
No, you're fine. Any questions so far with Laura?
Mayor, I have a couple questions. Lauren, where can we find that 11-page plus review? I'm looking at some of the old Planning Commission documentation, and there are some individual agency comments from various groups, but I don't see the 11-page plus document that was sent back.
Sure. We actually copy and pasted all of the comments from that 11-page document into that broader spreadsheet. So that spreadsheet does reflect the 11-page document,
Okay.
just sorted by chapter. But the actual document itself is available on the city's website. I believe it's on the project, the CDP project website. If not, other areas, and perhaps Anne could elaborate if you recall, or I can look that up momentarily.
Nope.
You may be able to find it on the portal.
Yep.
Go to the homepage, there's a block there that says Comprehensive Development Plan.
Yep.
You click on that, it'll take you to the actual comp plan projects page, which shows everything that has gone through with the planning commission. It should be in there.
Ed, I just sent you the link.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't see the,
It's there.
did not see that one. Lauren, one last question. On the documents that we got for draft number 6,
A 6 or the one that
No,
we're
no,
looking
draft
at today?
6.
7, okay.
draft 6 has a track changes document. The draft number 7, I don't see included a track changes. Is that something that it was omitted?
We provided the track changes version for draft 6 because the Planning Commission was specifically looking at those, mainly those changes.
Okay.
We do have a track changes version of to get you from draft 6 to 7 that we can provide. It just was not provided in the initial transmittal package.
Okay.
But we certainly can do so.
Is there, I'm assuming that the 10-year-old CDP we took as a base and then made changes from that, correct? Can we see a complete track changes from everything that was modified? Or is that,
Unfortunately, no.
that's a big ask.
Freeman, I think,
Just
yeah.
a little a background. The initial work on the CDP started with a different consulting firm. I actually worked for that firm a few years ago and then switched to my current firm, but they made the initial modifications to the various chapters. And I do not have that in a track changes format. There were some wholesale layout changes, so it could be entire chapters look like they were deleted, but in fact they were just moved from one location to another. But beginning with that version that we received, which had not been shared publicly, that firm provided that draft to us, and that's when our work started in fall of last year.
Okay.
So that CDP draft number 1 is the first draft that was publicly available, and from that point on, we've been keeping track of those changes, and our firm has control over those various modifications.
Okay, but so when we look at different CDP drafts, if there's a track change document, it's from one draft to another. It's not inclusive from your draft 1. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And probably one thing that would be helpful for between this version 7 and a version 8 would indeed to be a red line version, so that we can keep track of it. Because hopefully there's fewer and fewer changes there, and then that would help us very much. So going back, thank you, Lauren, for your explanation of the plus and what might cause us to have to resubmit. I don't know that it's anything to be scared of, just we need to be aware of it because there is a timeline. And that timeline is a deadline of June 1st. Again, that's why I have such a liberal meeting schedule, that we have 2 paths forward. If we need to resubmit to plus, there's one path forward. And if we don't have to resubmit to plus, then there's a second path that's more relaxed. But at the end of each meeting, I think we'll do our best to identify when is our next meeting and identify the topics for focus. My hope is that we're able to reduce that lengthy liberal meeting schedule by half or two-thirds, possibly. So today's process, would like to offer to Glenn and Lauren any additional time for comments, and then go to the commissioners for general questions and comments on anything they'd like to share. And then I'd like to turn to Lauren for a review of unresolved issues coming from the Planning Commission discussions or coming from commissioner queries, and let the commissioners engage in discussion seeking resolutions if Lauren thinks that's the best way to go versus waiting for each chapter. And then we'll end with review chapter by chapter. And I would intend when we review chapter by chapter to look at each page, give everybody an opportunity to wordsmith or make any note of changes. But I would say let's give thought to deferring on chapter by chapter review of the executive summary and implementation and the appendix and have them last, because what we do in each chapter is going to ultimately be reflected in the executive session. Glenn, any further comments you'd like to
I
make?
don't have anything further, Mayor, before the commissioners get into it.
Very good. Lauren, any further?
Just the highlights of the outstanding comments. As you know, we did make those changes from from draft number 6 to 7. Those changes were actually fairly minor, and there is a PDF of the PowerPoint that we used during the Planning Commission meeting on Friday, May 13th, that outlines those changes that were made.
I'm sorry, are you getting into the unresolved issues?
Yes.
What I'd like
Oh,
to
my
do is
apologies.
just defer one, but give the opportunity to the commissioners. Do you have any general comments or questions you'd like to ask before Lauren continues?
I guess the only thing that I would ask is if the solicitor could give us, and I know you gave us a quick overview of county versus city or municipal CDPs, but since the last, our current CDP has been in place, and now we're looking to, 12 years later, update it in that regard, have the courts or the interpretation of the weight of a CDP changed in that 10 to 12 years, from how the material is viewed, or you talk about the force of law and what have you, in trying to, think about this and the changes that have taken place and the vision we're creating. Do the courts look at it in any different manner or carry different weight than they did in 2010?
Well, so the state code hasn't changed since the requirement for CDPs came into being. That the language in the state code has remained the same. What has changed is there have been challenges and reviews of CDPs through the courts, and we've gotten a little better understanding of what the force of law means. I still don't think it's perfectly defined. There's a case by Vice Chancellor Noble where he says that a CDP is a roadmap for the municipality to sort of guide it where it's going and to help commissioners, for example, the elected officials make decisions. But it's in that opinion where he says there's going to be conflicting goals within a plan. So, there in that case, he tries to describe again that it's a holistic document and you have to look at it that way. So, I find from time to time, when we're going through applicants who bring, not just in this jurisdiction, but in all jurisdictions throughout the state, people will focus on one sentence within the CDP to hang their hat on and say, you have to do this because it says it here in this sentence. But then there's 4 paragraphs a chapter later that say something a little bit different. So you have to be careful about focusing on that one little sentence, because the courts have been clear through these cases to say that it's a comprehensive document, and it has to be read that way. I mean, we're how many pages is this draft? You know, so yeah, right, 300 plus pages. So, you know, you have to read it as a comprehensive document, and I guess that's maybe part of the takeaway that we've learned over the past decade about how it's going to be reviewed. But again, we also understand that we now understand that the language in the state code saying it has the force of law isn't just flowery language. The courts have said the force of law means the force of law. So in some respects, it's almost as if it's codified. It's not in our actual city code, but when the state code says it has the force of law, then there, again, that has meaning, and the courts have, so when it says that no development can be approved that's not consistent with the code, if we were to get an application in to the city and the application perhaps was consistent with our zoning code, because our zoning code has not yet said what our CDP says, and I'm not saying just enough flowery has not caught up with our CDP, but I'm saying if there's specific objectives and the words shall are used within the CDP, and we haven't done that, an applicant who might comply with our zoning code but doesn't comply with our CDP, we as a city should be rejecting that application because the CDP has the force of law and no development can be approved that's inconsistent with it. And so to the extent that we didn't reject that development and somebody challenged it, the courts could say you should not have approved that plan. You should have rejected that plan because your CDP is not consistent with what was advanced. And it's our job, you know, sort of as your consultants and your city staff to be reminding you continuously, you know, of what's in the CDP and that it does have the force of law. I mean, every time we look at the code to see what it says in the zoning chapter or in the building code chapter, we should sort of have the CDP sitting right here beside us and say, okay, and what does this one say? Just to make sure we're staying in line with what our CDP says. This is not a document that's supposed to be completed after all this time and then set on a shelf till the next update. It has the force of law.
I thank you for that comment in that regard, and that would lead into a discussion further down in some of the chapters reviews, in the sense that, you know, a lot of times that responsibility that you describe about reviewing the zoning code certainly falls with qualified city staff. But I don't know that we've, as the board and commissions, have given them the proper tools to also understand that the CDP has the force of law, or using those as if you will, parallel documents, and seeing that if there are conflicts or that they match in that regard. So I think that's part of the implementation process that I would certainly like to take a look at, and I would like some direction, you know, from you and your other municipal experience, if that has been applied and implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. That's where I indicated deferring a little later to the discussion of land use and force of law, because to me, there's an important discussion to be had there. I think some of the language that the state uses is misleading, frankly. And every time I talk about this, I try to clarify. So you know where I'm headed, and at the appropriate time, we'll talk about land use and the requirement within 18 months to address those things. Lauren, now I turn it back to you. So we're going to go to you for any unresolved issues that you can identify them all. And then if you have proposed resolutions or something, then you'll let us know.
Sure. These were some of the items that we had received comments on regarding either draft, regarding draft number 5, and that discussions with the Planning Commission or coordination efforts took longer, and we were not able to incorporate the resulting information into the draft that the Planning Commission reviewed on the 13th and forwarded to you all for your review. So as part of that, one such item relates to the neighborhood maps that are in Chapter 3. So here we have display maps of what we had understood as the boundaries of various neighborhoods. This was taken from a document, an older document that we had found. And subsequently, we have had some input from multiple people about some discrepancies between the original neighborhood maps that we showed. I believe that started back in draft number 3. And so we've made some iterational changes to those maps. And so rather than try to rush through that, we wanted to take the time to reach out to the appropriate people to make sure that we're confirming that the neighborhood boundaries and related descriptions are as accurate as possible to the best of everyone's knowledge. So as part of that, I passed out before the meeting started this 11 by 17 map. It does look different than the version in the draft itself. The version in the draft is an aerial map with a boundary. This map that I handed out is based on the parcels and shades in a different color, the various neighborhoods. So this is something that we're going to be continuing to coordinate on so that we can make sure that those neighborhoods as accurately as possible reflect what is the current understanding. The second item, this stemmed from comments from from Sussex County when we shared draft number 5 with them. They provided some comments that they would like to see some additional language related to some water and sewer projects. One was the Rehoboth Beach, Henlopen Acres Water Interconnect Project, another the East Lake Drive Water Interconnect Project, and then the partial bidirectional connection of parts of West Rehoboth to sewer utilities. So this is something that I've been coordinating with the city manager on. He and the public works director have provided updated information. So we do have that. We're just going back through and reviewing, but we should have that updated draft language available that we can share back with you all for your review. On a somewhat related topic, another comment that we had received had to do with primarily the transportation and other infrastructure projects or initiatives that were detailed in the draft in various sections. These included projects that had been completed between the 2010 plan's adoption and the current draft. So just trying to highlight some of those major projects that the city has undertaken. The flip side of that are the projects that are either currently ongoing or are planned to take place in the future. So something that shows up in the capital improvement plan, something like that. So because this has been an ongoing process, as the mayor mentioned, this process started several years ago. We had received some comments that the current status may not be correct, or some things have changed since the draft was initially put together. So again, we reached out to the city manager, who has provided some updated information, as well as the public works director, to better reflect the current status of those projects. So again, we are reviewing the information that was provided, and we'll be able to turn that around to you. So those are really the 3 items that had not been addressed in draft number 7, particularly the neighborhood map comments. The related pages in draft number 7 has red text that just calls out the fact that we are coordinating on those efforts. because the other two items are, span more than just a specific number of pages. We didn't have a similar comment like that, but you'll see that as you move through Chapter 3. And if I may, just to address Mr. Gossett's comment, hopefully to make the implementation side easier, we do have a Appendix F, I believe, yes, that is basically a placeholder at this point, but it's an index. So we are going to, once the plan is completed, try to highlight those keywords, key topics, so it is easy to find all of the related information in the comprehensive development plan. So hopefully when we move into the implementation phase, it will be easier to find those few items that either connect or where there are disconnects between that and what's going on in the development world.
Lauren, could you give us a couple examples of the transportation issues and projects that came up?
So for example, we had, this one in particular was something that had been called out by DelDOT. Just they had let us know that there were some updates needed to the description of the Wilmington and Baltimore Avenue streetscape project. So that one in particular, we coordinated with DelDOT and shared that with the Planning Commission and others on that update to refine the language. Some others have to do with changing timeframes. So some projects had an identified completion date or an anticipated completion date that perhaps because of the effects of COVID or budget prioritizations or just changes to how projects get prioritized, that was shifted from when the CIP information we initially sourced was publicized to what is currently the current status of those projects. Some others include just some additional elaboration on various projects. So again, sanitary sewer interconnection with Sussex County, State Road pump station bypass piping, just some additional few sentences about those different projects. And I do have one copy of the document that was provided to us by the city. I can certainly also share that with you for additional detail.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Lauren? So what do you think your timeline is to be able to resolve those, inserting them into the next version?
I think the items related to water, sewer, basically the ones that I just spoke of, other than the neighborhood maps, they will very easily be able to incorporate into the next version. I have had some conversations with the director of the Historical Society, who she believes that there is documentation that may give some shed some additional light on the neighborhood boundaries, but also we want to just do our best to verify with whomever we can that what we're showing is what the city feels is most accurate, and just move from there. So that one might take a little longer, but it really depends on when we're able to have those conversations and make those updates.
It sounds like the changes in neighborhood maps could be looked upon as would not be significant enough to send us back to the plus. Because
That's
more
correct.
clarifications, if you will.
That's correct, yes. This is updating to reflect the accuracy of mapping. It doesn't have a substantive impact. We don't have any policies in the draft that says in neighborhood X must do X, Y, or Z.
It has no zoning implications.
It does not. It's just a representative graphical
Informational.
map.
Right, yeah, right. That's important because there's a lot of stuff.
So is there anything we can do to help facilitate expediting
I got
those
a lot of questions about it, so,
about the maps?
maps, yeah.
What, do you want to wait until we get into that chapter, or do you?
I thought, this is a big unresolved issue, so I thought we were gonna tackle that first, because it's a big unresolved.
That'd be fine. What chapter are we?
First of all, Lauren very helpfully gave us this large version today, which is extremely useful, but it also brought to mind a bunch of other questions. Then the individual maps for the individual neighborhoods are in chapter 3, I think starting on page 3-8. But just as an example, when I had submitted corrections for Country Club, it's still wrong in this version of the CDP, but it's correct on here. So is it your intention to correct it as per here?
In discussions with the Planning Commission, we opted, excuse me, because we didn't know the end result of what this coordination was going to show. We kept the maps that were in the draft number 7 as they were in draft number 5. So on this map, excuse me, I'm sorry. In the map that I handed out, I believe that does address the comments, particularly for the Country Club Estates neighborhood. Address your comments there, as well as additional comments we received afterward from John Dewey from the Planning Commission. So this was more of a trying to make sense of the various neighborhoods, put them all together on one page so that we could see where there were gaps or how the neighborhoods sort of interacted with one another.
Well, one thing that jumps out at me today, and I know that this was an issue when I think Commissioner Gossett corrected the school view map and I corrected the Country Club, it sort of left the school in no man's land, and it is today listed here as it's one of the white sections, and there are a number of others I see now that aren't in any designation. Would we be keeping it that? I mean, I don't mind, but are we sort of keeping it that way? Do we need to have the other designations for instance, the western end of Rehoboth Avenue that's not in the original city and it's not in Grove and Camp Meeting? You know, what is it, kind of thing? What is the school? Well, the school is its own zone. So we could create a separate, neighborhood color for that because it's unique, it's its own zone. On the other hand, you've got Scarborough Extended and the Baymart property in there as well. So I just don't know. Are we planning to have some undesignated areas?
I would think that let's think about the use of this particular map. And again, it has no zoning implications, but it's strictly neighborhood. And as part of the recommendations in further chapters, we talk about historic preservation, we talk about neighborhood characteristics, and I think that's where the use of this map comes into play, that this was generated, I think, from the 1996 original land use plan, the neighborhood designations. So I think that would be the reason to update this map or have everything identified. And the areas that are, excuse me, currently left white, if you will, the school, as Commissioner Gay mentioned, is its own zone, and there's also another portion up that is the cemetery, and then parkland up in the upper kind of left-hand quadrant there. And so if we could identify that as such. And then, and maybe an easy answer, and maybe not easy, but with regards to Schoolview, the Scarborough Avenue extended aspect, I believe that those lots are also 75 by 100, which are, some of them are 75 by 100, others are oddly shaped that could fall into the Schoolview section. And one of the other questions that may help us determine that is, Mr. Miller, do you know, I know we collect trash in the north, the south, and Schoolview. Is that designation, the Scarborough Avenue, included in the Schoolview collection? Do you know?
I believe, I don't know off the top
Okay.
of my head. One of the things that I had mentioned before to Lynn Cohen, the communication specialist, was maybe it would be helpful on the city website to have a map that displays the north side, south side, and school view, because there's been some confusion over whether or not, what area counts as school view.
Correct.
So I believe, I'd have to go back and check, but I could get you an answer in a few
But
minutes.
I would think, I believe that it is, in talking to some neighbors over there, but again, we could confirm that with the Public Works Department, but that may help, again, our citizens and residents understand that designation. So to me, that's a way to proceed in those areas. And then the area up around Rehoboth Avenue where the municipal building is, I know I had raised that question before about zoning of the municipal building as to create that. And it was suggested, or we came to a conclusion that it would be best to leave it unzoned, and it just reads as, I guess, municipal buildings. It has no classification, which I personally don't agree with, but that's the conclusion that came forward. So if you leave that particular parcel as blank or just reading municipal buildings, then I think the flow of the lots around it should fall into the original city classification, because again, the original schoolhouse, the original fire department, many of those buildings existed along those areas. So again, looking at history, trying to go forward, to me, that would make the most sense going forward on the basis of information that we have available to us. So that would be my thoughts on that material.
This map is not going to appear anywhere? This is a working document, sort of? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, because, like, for instance, the green of South Rehoboth goes all the way up to areas that are not South Rehoboth. It goes all the way up to Surf. So that's one issue. And I just noticed today that the western finger of Silver Lake is not accurately shown on there. It actually goes behind a bunch of those houses that are in yellow. And interestingly, while we were talking earlier today, I looked at other maps. Fortunately, it's correct on the environmental maps in Chapter 7, but it's even wrong on the current zoning map, it looks like, that it just doesn't extend far enough there. And it's very important from a floodplain, wetlands perspective, but on those maps, it's correct. Stokely, and this is another error, Stokely Street extended does not go straight through like that. The walkway through the park is not there. It's in a different place. So, and again, I think that's incorrect on a lot of maps. And I don't know what the fix is, but just to note that. But also, you had mentioned on the other after, in addition to correcting the country club, when the other big question I had was on the what's it called, Grove and Camp Meeting area. First of all, Grove Park, I would think, would be part of Grove. The fact that it's a park, Stokely Park is here as part of Country Club. So Grove Park would be part of Grove, presumably.
Susan, do we have any reference, or the,
It's on, you mean in the CDP itself?
Yeah,
Yeah, the maps start on 3.8. A Grove Camp Meeting is, actually, the Grove is not noted in that either, is page
314, I think.
314, yeah. 314. But I had questioned that one from the beginning because I was surprised that Camp Meeting, and I think of the area south of Rehoboth Avenue, 6th Street Canal, that area. I hear realtors even refer to this today as the encampment grounds. So I was aware of that as the camp meeting area. I didn't know it extended north of Rehoboth Avenue to include, part of Sussex. and part of Columbia. I just had no idea of that. So I don't know where that came from, and maybe the Historical Society can help answer that. But that was my other question besides the country club question.
Part of the items that you brought up, the strip of green along the beach area, that's just a mapping error. But this display map is showing the parcel boundaries, so not actually streets or curb lines or anything like that. So there may be the appearance of a street, but it's not actually a street. It's just how the parcels have been combined to lay out this way. And again, the Silver Lake showing up under the yellow or other areas, that's again just a layering issue.
That's fine.
That we can take care of.
So, Commissioner Gay, you've identified the Grove Camp Meeting area neighborhood there. You're questioning some of that. How do we resolve that? Do we need to assign you and Lauren or you and Evan and Nancy Alexander? We need a methodology here to.
Right. I mean, it just looked out of place to me. I would think that maybe the Historical Society could shed some light on it, especially since that area goes back to the camp meeting days, so.
So who's going to approach?
But what else
the
would it be?
historical?
What do you mean, what else would it be?
I mean, if Grove Park wasn't part of that, what else would it be?
No, Grove Park is part of it. I just don't know that Sussex and Columbia were part of it. I've never heard them referred to as, encampment grounds have been referred to mostly as the south of Rehoboth Avenue. So if you're going to put Grove in there, maybe it's considered a Grove Park neighborhood, the Columbia and Sussex. I suppose you
But
could.
I think that comes down to what the purpose is, because, I think all of these people on Wilmington, Delaware, and Brooklyn Avenue, they would say that they're in South Rehoboth.
That's true, too, yes.
And I think there's I think laying out the pines, they've done a very good job. But there's other parts here that, and I would agree with Commissioner Gay, I think people on Sussex and Henlopen, Columbia there, down to around the Municipal Hall area and other parts on Virginia and Olive that are not identified, and all of the other areas here in North Rehoboth that are identified as original city, those people would say they live in North Rehoboth.
Or the Pines.
Or the Pines.
Fine.
Yeah. Right.
City limits might be wrong too on the south. I would sure want to check that.
So, yeah, and it does go back to the purpose of it. You're absolutely right. And I'm
Right.
especially mindful of, the detailed discussion we had earlier about the fact that the maps have the force of law. But this particular map is not going to be in there. This is just for our purposes. But it's in there
As
in
each
chunks.
neighborhood
Yeah,
is-
and so, you tell me, it's not a zoning map, but at the same time, it's in a document that has the force of law, so.
Yeah, I guess if, if there were specific rules we had that related to individual neighborhoods, that would be relevant here. As we've said, this isn't a zoning map. There's not zoning rules and laws set up for each neighborhood. I guess it could be confusing, as Evan, as you're asking about trash pickup and what neighborhood is it. And so, it would, I guess it has some consequences in that respect. But I don't really see a scenario where the city's going to get sideways legally because it didn't properly identify the neighborhoods. I think it's an important discussion, but I don't see this as a map that's going to really result in adverse legal consequences.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Then I might leave the camp meeting stuff up to the Historical Society, because they probably have more information on what was the original camp meeting, than anybody.
Susan, can I assign you to go talk with
Well,
Nancy?
Lauren's already in touch with Nancy. I
You
mean,
have been?
I've
Okay.
made contact and we're
Yeah.
just finding a time to get together to look at the materials.
Okay, that's great,
I just want to make sure somebody's assigned to that task.
So I guess one question I would have for the commissioners is, are you okay with areas within the city not falling into a specific neighborhood? And the white areas that are identified here, is it acceptable that they're not designated in a neighborhood?
I think they should be.
You know, they should be within a
I
neighborhood.
think they should all be, I don't think we should have anything that's an unknown and unidentified. I mean, I don't know why wouldn't you make Scarborough Extension, why wouldn't you do that where the school is? That's all school view. And then I would finish out the triangle where City Hall is and just extend the blue. Then the only thing open to me would be that block of Sussex and looks like Rehoboth Avenue.
I'm surprised of it. What's the deal on the half of Virginia Avenue and half of Olive not being, I guess that was not part of the original city. Right, that's what those aren't for. I didn't know that wasn't part of the original city, but that's what's implied here.
Yeah, I think that's something that's more factual, and we can't change that.
No, yeah.
Or we just get rid of the original city and incorporate some parts of that in the South Rehoboth and some
Correct.
in
No, that would be the
North
other way to do
Rehoboth.
it, yeah.
Unless there's, you know, a reason why we're identifying what used to be the original boundaries.
So that section that we've shown it as the original city here, that was not the name of this neighborhood when we first did these neighborhood maps.
Wasn't it called the Historic District or something?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So there was, the planning commission thought that there was an obvious meaning to historic district related to, you know, zoning or a national or local historic district. So calling this area the historic district, they didn't want there to be confusion about that. So we had some back and forth about potential names for this area, and that was what we landed on. So perhaps it wasn't the best choice in hindsight, but
It's downtown.
In reading the original city section, I see no particularly strong reason why it's there. And I'd assume just incorporate those sections into what I would call North Rehoboth, which is everything other than Grove Camp Meeting and the Pines, and then those other areas. I think Country Club Estate is very well outlined there. Everything else besides School View should be South Rehoboth.
I see why this is one of the unresolved issues.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Are you just advocating, Commissioner, are you advocating having almost a sub-classification of North Rehoboth, South Rehoboth, with Rehoboth Avenue being the middle, the cutoff?
Yeah, everything to the south of that I would call South
South
Rehoboth.
Rehoboth.
Everything north
Right.
Rehoboth, while still maintaining what is currently considered the Pines.
Or the neighborhoods, right, okay. I think that certainly would be helpful for the issues of trash and recycling and some of the other issues that come up of where am I located? It's either north or south.
I guess it gets back to use, though, in that regard. And I think what the original development of these neighborhoods was based on neighborhood characteristics and the time that they were built and what have you. So again, I look towards that as the use of historic districts we talk about elsewhere in the CDP of reinstituting or looking at the architectural review board, those types of things, which I think have more application to a neighborhood definition than kind of trash pickup or what have you. I was just mentioning trash pickup because we do identify Schoolview as a neighborhood, and Scarborough Avenue Extended is kind of out there by itself. Again, I don't know how these maps will be used, but it's based, originally, the definitions came from architectural style and location and what have you. So I would just go in that direction for the use of it. Again, this is not, well, I don't know, the solicitor, is this, the force of law if we adopt these, but these would not be included as a formal map, but just a description of neighborhoods?
I mean, I guess, again, the only time I could see this really coming up is, for example, if you've publicized that something's going to be occurring, trash pickup or some other utility work or whatever within a certain neighborhood, and, it's shown here as not being, as an area being within a neighborhood, and then that work not being done within that neighborhood. I mean, I could see somebody saying, I planned around, this schedule in this neighborhood, and it shows me there, and you've said you're going to do work, and you didn't do work. So I could see maybe an outside scenario like that where it could become important. And I think if you're going to define the maps, if you're going to define the neighborhoods, then going forward, if we're publicizing things as to trash pickup schedules and otherwise, and publishing them in the context of what neighborhoods, then we need to be mindful of what's been included within the CDP.
Yeah, Glenn, you bring up a good point, because I recall when we had done the bulk pickup, there was some confusion because the south side was the first week, and then the north side as well as Schoolview was the second week. So then I recall on Scarborough Avenue Extended, they thought they were part of Scarborough Avenue, so things were out the first week, but they weren't collected until the second week. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, yes, it is part of Schoolview, Scarborough Avenue Extended.
Nothing else, we should make them part of Schoolview.
And my understanding is the reason for that was that, to make it symmetrical in terms of number of properties, that there's more on the south side, so that they had to add some to the north side to even it out a little bit. I mean, the only problem with changing it for north-south and all that is you do have these narrative descriptions in the CDP of these areas. I don't know what happens with that. I mean, they're good narrative descriptions.
So the original intent for these areas or this component, along with the preceding pages in the draft that talk about the styles of or architectural characteristics and styles, was really to give a little bit more description about the community character, where sort of how development has taken place and how the look and feel has changed. Part of that relates back to one of the requirements in the state code about community character and guidance from state planning, just how we needed to show a position on community character, but that doesn't directly relate to these items in particular. This was really meant to be more descriptive, along with the discussions of history and things like that. So as far as these items within this section, we don't have particular action items or strategies that relate back to these items or to these maps themselves. We intended this to be more background material, if that helps in the deliberations at all.
I just go back to, and I completely understand Commissioner Gossett's position on this area was established for a reason. It was the historic district. Well, if we were ever going to do something that we would have special incentives or have things, an architectural review board or anything, we're 30 years too late for that. If we're going to do it, it's going to be citywide. It's not going to be for, 6 blocks that happen to be mostly commercial on the first 2 blocks of Rehoboth Avenue and the surrounding areas. I mean, it's just not, it's not realistic. We're 30 years too late to do anything like that. If we're gonna do anything with historic preservation or design standards, it's gonna be citywide, or it's gonna be on what people actually considered neighborhoods to be. And it's North Rehoboth, South Rehoboth, the Pines, Country Club, Schoolview. These are what people consider themselves to be in, these certain areas.
Patrick, do you remember the MPO and how those maps might relate to this?
That's where this comes from.
This comes from?
Right.
Okay. Well, again, this I think would be very important to resolve and have a map for city managers' use, et cetera, but it's not a requirement of the CDP. So, I don't want that to hold us up. I think it's very important, but
Would it make sense if I have the conversation with Nancy, coordinate with her on whatever information the Historical Society may have and what light it may shine on any of this, and then come back with those findings and perhaps an example of a revised map that shows all of the various parcels in a neighborhood, and then we can sort of come back to that discussion with something in front of you.
I think so. I think so.
But could we all agree at this one point that Scarborough Avenue should be included in Schoolview?
I think so.
But Evan, the map that you need doesn't necessarily need to be this. I mean, you could have an outline of North Rehoboth and South Rehoboth plus Schoolview or something specific to the trash collection, yard waste collection, all that.
I'll just point out in terms of taking, I think we need to be very careful about not maintaining original city historic district. The State Office of Historic Preservation did say that they appreciated our efforts in addressing preservation. They encouraged the city to pursue listings in a proposed historic district. So, I don't think that we should completely eliminate whatever is a historic district for that reason. I think they might.
I don't disagree, but where would our historic district be?
Well, it's shown on here as original city. That doesn't
Right,
mean.
but if I dropped any one of us at Olive and First Street, where would we say we were? We were downtown.
Yeah, right. No, I know. I'm just saying that we shouldn't do away with the historic aspects altogether.
Right.
Whether it's this map or some other version, that we should not do away with it altogether because the state has addressed it in the plus region.
Do the names of these 6 neighborhoods reflect the names given by the MPO? I just thought the MPO had a historic or downtown or something other than original city nomenclature.
My surprise on this was the Grove Camp meeting. I would have thought that the top of that was the Pines and the other side of Rehoboth was a country club. I thought, for me, this Grove Camp meeting came out of the blue. I've never heard
well, it
anybody
is-
refer to that.
It is true that 6th and that the area that's south of Rehoboth Avenue in here is definitely not Country Club. I mean, part of the reason that I was able to delineate specifically Country Club is a Country Club is a deeded, it's the only one in the city where on the property deeds, there's a specific association.
Very defined, right?
Yeah, a property owners association that's where we have annual dues and it was created that way in the 60s. So Country Club is truly a defined neighborhood. As I said, what I've seen in the 10 years I've been around, that area is called encampment grounds. So I think it is by the realtors. I mean, that's what they refer to it as. And so I think it obviously was we should ask Paul Lovett some of these questions. It was the original camp meeting. So that part of the description about Grove didn't surprise me. What surprised me was, as it surprised you, going north of Rehoboth Avenue.
Right.
Yeah, that's what seemed odd to me.
I'm trying to think of ways that we would incorporate a neighborhood map like this. And just hearing Commissioner Gay talk about country club estates, so that's one area that was formerly a country club, not a lot of trees. One thing that I would think that, and we're currently talking about the tree code, right? If we were to provide incentives, we may want to say, those houses in country club estates, we're going to provide an incentive for them to plant an additional tree.
Canopy trees or something.
Right, because they don't have as many trees in that neighborhood. And so I'm trying to think of ways that we might use neighborhoods in the future, and that's one thing that came to mind.
Getting ready to talk about impervious surfaces, but I don't, can you hear me now? But right now, I don't anticipate using neighborhoods, but that certainly may come up.
With what, the impervious surfaces?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about a fee for different situations with impervious surface numbers. Who owns it? Is it a residence? Is it a commercial? But I don't anticipate neighborhoods, but it's just something to keep in the,
I'm just trying
somewhere
to
way
think
back.
outside of the box. Why might we want to identify these different areas? What may we use them for in the future?
Well, I think they're part of the character of the town, right? I mean, that,
And we may have, yeah, and we may have a historical designation come along. I can see that.
I think, one of the comments we hear frequently is one size does not fit all.
Right.
And there are, for however you want to slice it up here, these divisions have specific character to them, density, trees, parking, sidewalks, all those types of issues. And again, I don't know going forward, Commissioner Shanowski, I understand trying to go forward, what will we use it for, but if we just whitewash it into north, south, and school view, then, we lose that distinctions. And some people are rather proud of their neighborhoods and what have you, or, I live in the Pines, or I live in South Rehoboth, or I live in Schoolview. Again, I think, to me, the areas that we should be focused on is the white areas and where they should be included, and perhaps research with Nancy Alexander a little bit more could help us determine those. But as you're saying, an incentive for Schoolview to plant trees, or, there are so many overly wooded lots in the Pines, maybe that's an aspect of the tree ordinance. Or, there's certain areas in here, like Schoolview has underground utilities where other neighborhoods don't. So there are some distinctive factors in there, again, that, sidewalks and curbs and that type of thing. So I just think they exist, and, just to maintain them in that regards.
There's no reason why we can't identify all of these white areas
Yeah.
and the blue, North Rehoboth, and what's the original city, south of Rehoboth Avenue, South Rehoboth, but also still identify what was the original boundaries. There's no reason why we can't do that.
Yeah. Well, again, I just looked at the solicitor, these, if we identify these and they are part of the CDP, you know, how is that kind of interpreted? You were talking earlier about conflicting information in parts of the zoning code versus parts of the CDP and what have you. That would be my only hesitation. And again, I don't think, Lauren, is this a part of the CDP or is this sort of appendix information
This
kind of thing?
isn't, but these are.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
yeah.
Well, again, these, again, this does not have to be in the CDP. But if it is, it can reflect whatever the title is. And if the title of the map is identifying trash zones, then what's the force of law with respect to the trash,
I mean, I guess the issue is if we're gonna have, if you're gonna have chunks in the CDP, and somebody goes to CDP to say, well, what neighborhood am I in? There's gonna be certain people who are gonna go there and say, I guess I'm not in a neighborhood because it's not the
Right.
area is not defined as they're currently set out. Those chunks won't include certain properties.
I agree with filling in all the white spaces.
I think I agree with that.
Fill them in, give them,
think they ought to give them
give them a designation.
What's wrong with just saying that you just move the blue up to the white, the blue where we are in City Hall, and then we'd fill in school view? Then to me, the only question mark is Sussex and that one white block between Sussex and Rehoboth Avenue.
The problem with that, Commissioner, is this is factual. That blue area is factually what used to be the original boundaries.
Yeah, but I guess you could show on this map, you could just show, instead of calling it original city, just call it city, if you extend that blue, and then you could still do a darker line that shows original city if you wanted to keep it designated somehow. But rather than calling it original city, just call it city, because those are kind of all the commercial properties. Not really.
Or,
Well, no, but as Commissioner Shanowski said, people that live on Delaware and Brooklyn think they're in South Rehoboth.
That's why I would like to keep the map practical. It's what people, where they think they live. And then identify at the end of neighborhoods, the original boundary limits are this. It incorporates areas of both North Rehoboth and South Rehoboth, bordering the, Rehoboth Avenue and the boardwalk, et cetera. So we're identifying where people actually think they live, but also maintaining what used to be the original boundaries, for historical information.
I like the thought of the downtown designation being the entirety of Rehoboth Avenue plus Christian Street, well, all the commercial areas.
Yeah.
And that goes Baltimore and Wilmington, and that's it. So it constricts it a lot more. I agree with Ed and others on having a heavily dotted line or whatever, identifying the original city boundaries or something. Where I used to live in the second block of Maryland Avenue, we were kind of always question mark. Don't know, and still don't know what that area is, because it could be, I guess,
Downtown,
North Rehoboth.
North Rehoboth,
North Rehoboth, but it's certainly not the Pines.
right. Yeah, I was.
So-
North Rehoboth.
So maybe North Rehoboth is merely Maryland Avenue, Virginia. And then you got the Pines.
Yeah, it's true. There's nothing on here that says North Rehoboth, but that's a commonly used designation. So,
Remember, but if you're in the Pines, you're going to say you're in North Rehoboth as well. So you don't want to have a North Rehoboth and the Pines, and we're both in North Rehoboth. As I understood what Commissioner Shanowski was saying, I think more for simplicity was there was a North and South Rehoboth, and that was more operational for the city. We're not talking about eliminating the neighborhoods or the boundaries. It's just trying to, where do we fit in some of these other ones? So for simplicity, if you just said I'm in North or South, and then, but I'm in North, but I'm in the Pines or wherever that is, but
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting just
Yeah.
as simple as north and south, because I think the Pines is a very distinct area. Country Club Estates is a very distinct area. Schoolville is very distinct. It's sort of this other area in between that I consider north and south Rehoboth, north and south of the avenue.
Yeah, and remember, there are these nice narrative descriptions in the CDP, so we don't want to throw those out, right?
Yeah, we may decide to go to a code at one time where we have neighborhoods and we have architectural
Yeah.
characteristics.
Yeah, and that's one of the things mentioned in the PLUS review too, is they want to see us look at that architectural review manual again, and that's
suddenly those things become important.
That's right.
Just do what they do in California, put heights at the end of it. So it'll be Country Club Estate Heights, School View Heights. Then
That was actually where, what's referred to as South Rehoboth
Is Rehoboth Heights.
is Rehoboth Heights, originally in the original maps, yeah, so. Anyway,
You're onto something there.
yeah. So kind of trying to land the plane here.
you're gerrymandering.
Yeah, exactly. If we were to, the blank areas in the, what we're referring to as original city, just maintain that as original city. The one block of, that's on Sussex there, I think if you ask the people who live there, they would say they live in the Pines. And the only other aspect is that little, not little, but the wraparound there of Country Club. I know is not, those are not deeded lots, as Commissioner Gay had
Right,
commented.
and that's why I took them off the other map, but they were originally in the map that's currently in the CDP, all that stuff on Rehoboth Avenue is shown as Country Club, but I took it off because it's not.
Well,
You're saying it should be for this purpose?
well, I'm just saying that as recently as we've had discussions about the commercial space there, that was really guided by residents from Country Club.
Well, right, but some of it is and some of it's not. I mean, wouldn't you include that part of Rehoboth Avenue in the commercial part? You just extend that down?
Yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
So those big condominiums that are on the beach, so Henlopen or Edgewater, where would those people say they live?
Rehoboth.
No
I
neighborhood?
don't think they, would define themselves, I could be wrong, but, the phrase original city or downtown, I don't think is used that much, but again, from my perspective, and that's where these original neighborhoods, that the development was from the architectural, the character of those neighborhoods. So it's not necessarily designed as trash pickup or bulk pickup or what have you. It's from the characteristics of the neighborhood, as I mentioned earlier, trees, sidewalks, underground utilities, that kind of thing. So, if people live in the Pines, they're also going to say, I live in North Rehoboth, or north of the avenue, south of the avenue, that type of thing. Again, just trying to keep it from the perspective of the community character of where it comes from. If you say North Rehoboth, people think of the Pines, they think of commercial, Baltimore Avenue, that type of thing. So I again, just back to how it originally was developed as community character, I just think carrying it on to that, and people are still going to say North Rehoboth, South Rehoboth, or Schoolview. I mean, those are the designations of city. It's like in Washington, D.C., I live in Northwest. No, well, I live in Logan Circle. I live in Bloomingdale, or I live in Shaw, this type of thing. They're the neighborhood's definitions, but officially, you're in Northwest, Northeast, Southeast, Southwest kind of thing.
If you're going to do that, you'd also say, people say I live at Silver Lake or I live at Lake Gerard
Right,
neighborhood, right?
yeah, and people do that.
Yeah.
So do we need Lauren to meet with Nancy and Nancy to give input before we can resolve where these neighborhoods are on this particular map?
I think Nancy can only provide so much guidance. I think we need to decide, for the most part, where do we want everything to be incorporated in one of these areas or not?
Do we want it to be incorporated into a current area, or do we want to designate a new area, like, for instance, the school? maybe not, maybe it's all part of Schoolview. I don't know how the people in Schoolview will feel about that. But, I mean, are we talking about just redesignating the white areas as opposed to considering whether we have all the right neighborhoods? Sounds that way.
I think if you look at it from a logic perspective of what's the white areas, what colors they should be, or how they should be identified, you kind of can just say the blue area to incorporate the triangle, the original city, or what have you, the Sussex into the Pines, and the Scarborough Avenue extended into Schoolview.
Yeah. Okay, the only thing is, Lauren, I don't know if that changes the narrative of those at all. It probably will change some minor things.
Lauren, was the narrative edited at all in this iteration of the CDP from when you started?
The boundary descriptions were definitely modified. The original language was not, I didn't think it was very clear, so we tried to make it a little bit clearer with what's in here now. But I guess there were a few modifications based on some comments that we received, but the rest of the descriptions were pretty close to what the original language was that we pulled from.
Is it the consensus to go forward with kind of what would seem to be natural, the filling in the blue, the rest of the triangle, the Pines of the Sussex, and Scarborough Avenue as Schoolview, just for the characteristics of neighborhoods, and that's community character is the title of the chapter.
I would agree with that.
I've got an issue with, I guess, just filling in the blue, because you're identifying that as what was the original boundary of the city. And I think incorporating something that was not the original boundary is not the proper thing to do.
Well, it says it's generally bounded by the boardwalk to the east, right?
But can we do the hybrid where we expand the blue, the length of Rehoboth Avenue, and then have that line around the original city?
I think call that the sort of the downtown area with the line around the original boundary. I'd be okay with that.
And then Brooklyn and Delaware are downtown. You okay with that? Okay. Yeah.
I think it's getting
Yes.
something closer to.
Yeah, but the narrative will have to be updated on all these.
And I think we all agreed Scarborough Extended would be Schoolview, but what about Silver Lane? Would that be?
Well, and Baymart, that's now part of Schoolview?
Silver Lake Drive, and
I would probably consider Baymart Schoolview, but I'm not sure about Silver Lane, because you really have to access that through.
Why? It's,
can't get there from here.
oh, well,
Yeah,
okay,
you have to access it from South Rehoboth.
right.
I would question that, but.
Well, again, trying to look at neighborhood characteristics or what have you, I don't think those homes around Silver Lake or in Silver Lane are very unique in their own set. Size-wise and lot-wise and what have you, they would more, I think, more be akin to Schoolview.
Are they large lots?
They're large lots,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, okay, all
They're
of them,
pie-shaped,
okay,
they're
yeah,
large lots,
okay.
as opposed to South Rehoboth, which are pretty, square. And maybe that, again, trash collection, I hate to go back to that, but. So are we kind of got a consensus there, folks? I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And-
Lauren, do you have that?
I think
We'll just rewrite the narrative a little bit to,
Just have to edit the
reflect.
narrative a little bit, yeah.
yeah.
To reflect boundaries, mostly.
Kinda showing what you're doing.
So if this area down here, that all becomes school view, we update that description.
Mark, or if you want to. I'll ask him. Here's our dotted outline for the original city. So we've said we wanted to highlight that. And then my suggestion earlier was to have the entirety of Rehoboth Avenue and the commercial area in blue. Thank you. And so you're right down here. What did you have? This whole area? Except for the school, right? So would you have something like that? Speak up, folks.
Yep.
So,
Certainly,
so we have,
Yep.
so we have school view. I don't care if you call it North School View and South.
No, school view.
What?
School
What?
view, school
Heights.
view,
School view heights.
school view heights, adjacent,
What did I say?
north, south.
north is
No, I was saying North,
We're kidding.
North
Yeah,
School View.
okay,
Okay,
okay.
gotcha. What else?
So we're gonna
Lauren?
split the encampment then, if you're gonna do the blue there? I mean, should that just be considered all the pines? The first
Oh,
block
all
of Columbia and the
these.
first block
Well,
of,
Don't you think? Where's our circle?
and people I know that live up across from the cemetery, I'll say they live in the pines.
This would be the blue commercial in the red,
Yeah.
within the red, right? Ooh, an old man's hands. So all this area here would become green, is that right?
I didn't think,
I thought you were saying that that's
No, I
going
didn't
to
think we said
remain
that.
original city.
Yeah.
that's the original city.
Well, I have
You've got the outline, but-
I have the dotted outline here as
Right.
the original city.
Right.
This is that hybrid.
Right. So they get included with
If we
South
went with the
Rehoboth.
hybrid, then it's, here's the original city, but the blue downtown area is here.
and you're actually defining a corridor there.
Yeah. As the commercial or area, downtown area.
And
And you
the-
got this funny area here.
Those people say they live in the pines.
yeah,
So this would become part of the Pines?
yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, except for the properties, that one lot line on Rehoboth Avenue.
Yeah.
So all these become,
And the same true there, the north side of Virginia and Olive down there.
well, this.
That's kind of original
okay,
city.
So here you've got,
That's the new Lake Gerard neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people do think of it that way. I mean, even people that are in the, like the Henlopen or something, think of it
so
that way.
here's your North Rehoboth area. Am I missing anything? Are we missing? So what is this area here? Because we've essentially taken it away from over here,
It's-
right? that area is now part of the Pines or the downtown corridor. Then we've got this area here.
So the Grove,
How did that get the name The Grove in the first place?
Grove,
Ask
Grove
Paul-
Park, you mean?
Ask Paul Lovett. He'll go on for days about how it's not, that shouldn't be the name.
Shouldn't be the Grove. He will say Grove only came into existence a few years ago.
well, that section over there, I guess was, as I understand it, was part of the original tabernacle. So that was, I guess, was the camp meeting grounds.
Little pink area.
Yeah.
Yeah. He would call that Shaw South or something.
But it's not, and there's nothing that's currently there that has any historical relevance, is there?
Yeah, but it's not the Pines, and it's not
Country
school-
Club.
Country Club. Yeah.
I would just call it South Rehoboth then.
Canal.
No, it's, or canal, yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, I always heard it called encampment grounds, I don't know.
Yeah, well-
So that would be this
Correct.
pink
That
area in
triangle.
here.
Yeah.
What did you call that again?
Encampment grounds, that's what the.
That's probably as good as anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something Nancy she could weigh in on that.
Maybe it is just a realty designation.
I like the
And then
canal better. I don't know, I
would-
can't.
I know, yeah, I'm just going by what the realtors have always called it,
Would this,
but Grove
these few
slash
parcels
canal.
over here be included in the New Pines area?
Yeah,
So
North Encampment.
That's a cemetery and, yeah, that's a cemetery and the park
Grove Park.
and a little road to the acres.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are what, three lots, four lots there.
Yeah. That,
what about,
this little section here should be that.
Yep.
That little, just that.
are we we're trying to have all parcels within a neighborhood that, so would that not include the cemetery and area there?
Well, I
Just
mean,
for
the pine,
geographic?
yeah,
That would be the,
Cemeteries in the Pines.
yeah, yeah, I think so.
And then I guess the only other piece is this, would extending,
that's the beach.
That's the beach,
Yeah. That's Deauville Beach, if you want to
Okay.
label it.
so actually, we're gonna take away the beach strip.
Right.
Right.
None of the beach strips will be,
Yeah.
all right, they're their own, but,
Right.
yeah, okay, yeah. So they don't have to be, yeah.
I think that is everything. And I guess, just, just so it doesn't bisect this area, including the school within
Yes.
the school view
Yeah, I
area?
think so. I
Okay.
think including the school and the cemeteries and all that, it's part of the neighborhood fabric, if you will.
Sounds good.
So it's finding a name for that area that's in orange and then what we were calling the encampment.
No, she wrote down encampment grounds.
I mean, do we really want
Well, I
to?
don't know, I'm just saying that's what the realtor, that's what I've heard it called, I don't know if it has any other name.
I'd
wanna
let
call it
Paul
Grove
Lovett
slash
and
canal.
Nancy weigh in on,
Yeah, that'd be
on
good,
that.
yeah. If we want to change it and call it Grove slash canal, then, maybe that's a sexier name than encampment grounds anyway.
What was it called?
Shaw.
Shaw. The
I think
Shaw.
just a few years ago was when we started calling it Grove.
Right.
Once the trailers moved out.
It was originally called Shaw.
Shaw Park, that's right.
Yeah.
Paul wants to rename it Shaw again.
Why don't we have a map that has the circle, the roundabout on it?
I was looking for that too.
But you can look at,
Actually, interestingly, David Mellon pointed this out to me a few years ago. The zoning map was never updated to include Jones Lane.
no, it's not been.
So that's not in here either. I hope in this, no?
That's what I was going to bring that up. that
Yeah.
Looking at the current zoning map, it's it's not correct in that regards. Jones Lane is not.
But whatever the zoning map is in the current CDP, has it been added?
We did not make modifications to the zoning map. That is the city's, it's just a PDF of the city's
Oh,
adopted
yeah, then that needs,
zoning map.
that's outdated, because a street was added, an entire street was added after the 2010 map, and it was never updated.
It's actually on, it's on here, but,
No?
yeah, you just, yeah, look
Yeah,
look
that
above
is.
the TH.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's not,
There
it's
it
just,
is.
it's
Yes,
just,
yes,
it's
yes.
yellow, it's not white.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we made progress.
Susan, so if, I guess one of our next meetings, if we can have this updated, is that something you all would do? Okay. Susan, did you have any other maps, or have we concluded with this? I mean, we.
Thanks,
we-
Susan.
We know that after this is
Now on
done,
to trees.
we know after this is done that city manager can take it and add his own geographic areas for trash and stuff, yeah. Susan, did you have something else you wanted to go to in the maps
Nope, nope.
section?
2 hours.
I have a comment though, on that, on that area that was orange that the mayor had highlighted, was it resolved what that was going to be identified as, or are we going to wait until we hear from,
I thought that was North Rehoboth,
we're going to call that North Rehoboth?
correct, Mayor?
Yeah, but what's North Rehoboth? Is North Rehoboth the entirety of this area?
I think you identified an orange area from Maryland all the way over to Chernobyl Place, that area being North Rehoboth. I thought you
North
identified.
Rehoboth, correct.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think that's confusing. I would suggest maybe we table that or call it Lake Gerard or something. I think Lake Gerard is defined, that you know where that is. North Rehoboth, I think, opens you up to, where's North Rehoboth?
I mean, North Rehoboth, I've always looked at North Rehoboth as anything on the north side of Rehoboth Avenue.
The north shore of Lake Gerard abuts against the Pines, and that north prong is in the Pines of Lake Gerard.
To me, there could be really just 3 zones. Your downtown area, that's the Rehoboth corridor. The entirety of the north area, north of Rehoboth Avenue, is North Rehoboth, and the entirety of the south of Rehoboth Avenue, but for the downtown corridor, is South Rehoboth. I guess the one exception for South Rehoboth would be then you can do School View area if you wanted. But then, so where, so do you want to divide it into a north, south, and downtown area, and then within those areas have the different neighborhoods?
Well, I think that's what we were talking about earlier, as more of a simplistic view. I just, my just question is about that orange area that we covered in, maybe giving that a proper name or waiting until some of the other stakeholders check in.
You mean the camp, the area we call Grove Camp?
Well,
Oh, he's talking about the north.
because I would have just moved that in and called it downtown, but it seems like we didn't have consensus on that. And if we're not going to call it the Pines and we're not calling it downtown, I'm not so sure we just call it North Rehoboth. I think it's Lake Gerard.
Here, I thought.
No. This
Oh,
Maryland over this area right here.
north.
Well, can we agree to have Lauren update the map based on what we just did, and we'll have to take a look at it again. So that will be one of our unresolved things.
Less unresolved.
Mayor, just to
Yeah.
be clear, as it relates to this, though, what we would be doing is identifying a new area, a new neighborhood per se, and that's the downtown area. Lauren, do you agree with that?
I think it's identifying that the corridor area as the downtown.
So that would need a new, that's new. So we would need to have a descriptive language around that. Correct?
Correct. And then I guess also for the Lake Gerard,
That North Rehoboth
North Rehoboth
area
area.
is not identified.
Everything else is just a tweaking of the existing boundary.
So is that something that your firm will tackle, or is it something that we need to do?
We can draft language and present it to you for feedback.
All right, thank you very much. With that, would entertain, is there anything else particularly troubling that we should devote some time to? If not, then I think we start on the individual chapters, and while we're at chapter 3, let's just start there and go through. And maybe we can at least get one full chapter looked at today, if not two. Anything else on anybody's mind that they would like to tackle?
Well, I guess it's part of chapter 3, but it's the actual zoning map, and just that if we can make sure that we reflect as it's depicted in the map you just reviewed, Jones Lane, et cetera, or how does that best work with our zoning map?
Are you
Yeah.
referring to,
This is,
is this the one that you're referring to?
Yeah.
correct,
That is the-
yeah.
We made a specific choice to use the adopted city's zoning map and not make any modifications to it whatsoever. This stems from the parcel issues that we are still working on. So we would recommend not modifying this map at all.
For the, for the
this-
CDP.
Correct.
Right, right. That map has legal significance and it's actually identified in the zoning code and referenced. So you wouldn't want different versions of that map appearing in different locations. So the official one actually hangs in building and licensing. So that map, I mean, if there were another change of zone to occur within the city, we would update the map and have the commissioners adopt the map with a new map with that zoning change. I don't think that happened when the subdivision was approved. The commissioners didn't follow up and adopt a revised map. So you could do that at some point, but I think Lauren's exactly right. The map, the official zoning map is the official zoning map, and that's what should appear in the CDP. You could make a note. I mean, I suppose you could drop a footnote that says this map does not reflect Jones Lane that was subject to the Oak
Yeah,
Oh,
Grove.
that probably ought to be done. There ought to be a footnote on it, yeah. So that's a formal procedure. We have to go through the change.
So we wait to get the CDP adopted, and then we can make that choice to update the zoning map or not.
Right. Do you know where that is, Lauren? So if you're looking at 6th Street up in if you're looking at your neighborhood map in the Grove Camp Meeting area. If you look at 6th Street, there's a little finger that goes into that area. It's colored pink, but you see where it goes sort of north off of 6th Street, right in the center of that pink area.
Let me show you.
Does the zoning map in this draft show the lots that were created when Oak Grove was created?
No.
No, okay. So none of that was updated. Okay.
Well, if nobody has anything else critical, I'd suggest we go through page by page as quickly as we can. Give everybody the opportunity to speak up and make any mention of potential edits. Also, if you make an edit, then that gives others the opportunity to debate it or not. We could also, I have a lot of little teeny wordsmith things, and some of them I can do a red line in the Word document. I think that included, you sent the Word document with us, and I could do a red line and send some of those also. Is that a okay plan? So we're looking at chapter 3, page 3-2. Three dash three. I'm going fairly quickly because I assume everybody's read it and made notes. But stop me, 3-4, 3-5, 3-6, 3-7, 3-7. What are they? Oh, they're the,
3, 8 through 13, 14 are the maps.
okay. Well, we've got 3-9, and of course, we've got the series there that makes that note about the map to be updated. So that would be 3-9, 3-10, 3-11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
I have just a question or comment on the 15 and 16 there. It's about the architectural design manual.
15 and 16, okay.
And it just, at the conclusion on 16, the final paragraph there says, although the manual was never codified, it provides homeowners, commercial property owners, architects, designers, builders with an excellent range of guidelines and suggestions for new and renovated structures that are consistent with existing streetscapes, neighborhoods, and overall city character. Use of the manual should be actively encouraged by city officials and staff. And maybe, Lauren, this is addressed in the final chapter, but how is that actuated? How is that implemented? It's a suggestion, but we said should be. Is it should and shall, and just what role does that play? Or how can, if it's in here, I think it's important that it be acted upon, but if we don't have the capabilities of doing it, should it remain?
Well, don't we have to look at the action items and the goals? And because if it's an action item, then I think that's where it would appear. The action items are on page 320, 321, Patrick.
So there we have action items to evaluate feasibility and desirability of local historic district designation, preservation regulations, and advisory committee creation, promoting the use of the architectural design manual as an aid to those groups that you just read, review and update, if needed, the architectural design manual, architectural review procedures. So several of those action items there relate to that topic. I think the action item B most specifically, just with promoting the use as a tool, more or less.
Evan, do you have any idea whether building and licensing actively promotes use now? They were supposed to have been doing that over the years, which means having that on a CD, having it hard copy, giving it, the way I interpreted it, Patrick, was that we would hand it out with each application that come in or if anybody expressed interest. Do you have any idea if?
I don't, Mayor.
My guess is it dropped through the wayside, yeah. So,
Mayor, it is on the portal, and I believe it's also on the website.
yeah, I know it's on the portal, but that doesn't mean we actively promote it. And so I think we can,
Hasn't been for years.
yeah.
That's my question is, I personally think it's useful tool, but how do we, implement it or explore, actively promote use of architectural design manuals? Again, how does the rubber meet the road in doing that? And I don't know whether is that in our Chapter 8 of implementation, or, to be very frank about it, do we have the bandwidth in the city staff of what's going on to really do this?
Well, I don't know that the how of every action item is resolved or in there. I look at it as still, this is still a guideline, and we need to sit down and figure that out, put it either on an agenda item or sit down with the city manager and say, we want this to happen, and come back to us on how you're going to make that happen. Anything else, Patrick?
No.
320, 321, just a couple wordsmith thing. In the Board of Commissioners, second paragraph on 321, it refers to individual members of the Board of Commissioners serve as liaisons with Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach, Chamber of Commerce, the Rehoboth Beach Historical Society, Rehoboth Main Street, and Cape Henlopen Senior Center. Is it easier for you to get them as we go, or do you want us to email you some things?
I'll be taking notes, but repetition doesn't hurt. So
Either-
if you want
either or
to send them
you-
to me, I'm more than welcome to make sure I caught everything.
Okay, okay. I've got some things. We say city committees as a general matter, members of each committee are residents, property owners, and business owners, and in some case, other stakeholders. So I guess that covers non-residents, you think?
Well, it covers the fact that there's still some on committees that live outside the city.
I want to make sure that that's clear, that they would fall within other stakeholders, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. They are appointed for 1 year's term. That means to be singular. Also, just while I'm at it, Parks and Shade Tree Commission, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth line down. The commission must apply provisions of the city tree ordinance, which seeks to balance a property owner's rights. That word "a," I think, needs to be inserted. Page 323, Personnel Committee, the entirety of that paragraph for under Personnel Committee, page 323. Between now and the next meeting, I would really like Patrick, the chair of the Personnel Committee, to review that whole paragraph, and also Evan Miller, acting city manager, to review that. My recollection is that this was what I call super enhanced from the last Personnel Committee and the previous chair. I don't believe it ever came in front of the city commissioners for approval, nor in front of the city manager for approval. So I'm just, I have a little question mark there, and I'd like for us to address that at the next meeting.
Yeah, also on that, it's a 3-member, not 4-member committee.
Well, you have to read it carefully. 4 members, including the city manager.
Oh, okay. Which
Right, so again, maybe you have some input on that, Ed, but my recollection again was that this did not come in front of the city manager or the commissioners, and instead was something, I'm not even sure the committee came up with it, versus the then committee chair. And the list of committees and task force, it omits the parking garage task force. That's a very sore point with me, so I'm fine with omitting it. Just for your information, I am working on getting the final minutes done, and because Sharon chaired that, and also getting the group together to approve final minutes, and asking them to make a summary of what they've accomplished and where they want to go, and to likely, if they choose, make recommendations to sunset the committee. But to do that, we have certain formal protocols that we have to go through to do that. So personally, I don't know, I don't think it's worth mentioning right now, but if anybody disagrees and wants it in there, we can do a quick write-up. Are we okay with omitting it? I see here, no. Very good, thank you. 325, 326, 327. Yes,
Mayor,
yes, sir.
I'm noticing, and this may just be, a lot of the margins are off on any given page. That will be
lot of
cleaned
what?
up.
A lot of what?
The margins are off. They're not
Actu-
consistent.
Actually, that was done intentionally for the printed version, so if you see here, the inside margin is wider to account for hole punching or binding.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you. 328, item J. Action item J, continue to support community organizations financially within the city at an appropriate level. I think that is the intent, because we can certainly give them hurrah support and advertising and things like that, but I think the intent is financially support them. Is there any agreement or disagreement? So
I mean, I think it's both.
Yeah, I question that myself, because it refers at the very top as organization provided in Appendix C. So if you look at Appendix C, we talk about Rehoboth Homeowners Association, we talk about Camp Rehoboth, we talk about Historical Society, the Chamber of Commerce, Canal Improvement Association, Downtown Delaware. There are a number of organizations listed here, just pulling, Country Club Estate Property Owners, that we have not in the past supported financially, but we have, through promotions or mentions or some type of support in that regards, non-financially. So I don't know.
no, I think that's a good point. I think how I read this was
Right.
the four groups that we give finances to. And if you limit it to that, it's largely financial. So are we okay with just ignoring my comment, and then it can be broad? Okay.
I don't think it implies financial support if we take into account all of them, because we don't have a history of supporting.
Right.
Right.
Right, and that's where,
But it says at an appropriate level, so frankly, if one of the organizations came to you and wanted you to promote their event, or put them on the sign out front, or put it on the website, we might want to do that.
well, it's possible, but there's also got to be policies,
Yeah.
because that marquee is not just used for,
Yeah, no, I'm just using that as
Anybody.
an example, but, what's the appropriate level? I guess it's too,
well, maybe at appropriate levels should be removed.
well,
Just support.
The support organizations within the city, period.
Are we okay with that?
Yep.
So Lauren, that action item J, we're just going to put a period after city and delete at an appropriate level. Thank you. 329, 330, 331, 332, 333. I'm getting excited. We're approaching the end of first chapter. 335, 336. 336, I think the list is fine. There's certain things like the cocoa crawl. I don't know if that happens anymore, but I think it's a good list just to maintain anyhow. And then 337, that ends.
I just noticed something, actually, I didn't notice this before, on the list of events in September,
On page 3.
336.
Uh-huh.
Chart of events. September, Dewey's Golden Jubilee.
Well, I know, it's, do we want to remove anything that's not specifically within the city limits of Rehoboth Beach?
Or have an element that is. I mean, there may be.
Yeah, you know, I mean.
Actually, Dewey's Golden Jubilee is listed under May as well.
Well, I don't even know what it is, but you know, some of their races, like the Dewey's Three Sisters race, starts in Dewey but comes through
That's
Rehoboth
fine.
and
But-
stuff
and
like
if the
that.
Jubilee does, then that's fine too. I don't know what it is. Do you, Evan?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't feel like going through it. I don't think it does that much harm. I don't think it does any harm, so I'm fine with just leaving it alone.
I just question, you know, this document is serves for 10 years. If people reference back to this document, a lot of those things are not happening or what have you. I appreciate the work that's gone into that, but, you know, what does it mean 5, 8 years from now if somebody references? It's you know,
Well, but between now and then, there could be another 50% of these that go defunct, you know? I mean, would
don't
you
disagree with
would you prefer sending this to the chamber in Main Street and asking them to identify anything to remove?
No, I just leave it as but just, I don't know what real purpose it serves in that regard, that
Okay.
we have, you know, we have some cornerstone or benchmark events, the 4th of July fireworks, the Art League, you know,
Jazz festival.
jazz festivals, sidewalk sales, those types of things that, you know, are kind of the cornerstones, if you will, or what have you. But it's fine, I just, you know, it will be out of date very quickly is the only thing I'm saying, so.
And Glenn just got information on the golden, and it's for golden retrievers. In fact, that was this past weekend. That's why I saw so many.
I thought it was
And their
for
parade
the
does
elderly.
does go through Rehoboth. It's a
thought
Dewey
it-
event, but they have a parade Friday night in Rehoboth. That
I
explains why I
thought it
saw
was,
so many of them.
I thought it was for those of us in our golden age.
We're looking for the dog park.
What would be the pleasure of the commissioners? I'm suggesting that maybe I've got some things to share on chapter,
Three.
the transportation, whatever that is.
So we're done with 3, basically,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so,
Well, I just have one final question on 3, if you will. Under the action items, again, maybe this is aspirational and what have you, but it's, you know, develop methods for the collection and analysis of data by city agencies that will provide metrics for assessing and projecting demographic trends. I understand what the process is, but, you know, Lauren, could you help me understand, you know, the collection of that data, what would we do with it?
This, I think, really reflected the, let's say, dissatisfaction with seasonal population data and looking at that projected out for the city itself. So finding a way to collect that and look at that specifically. The state provides seasonal projections for the county, but beyond that, nothing more than just resident
Year-round?
year-round populations. So just trying to focus on that piece of it more so, and then how that may impact different services or needs when we see that data changing.
Planning Commission talked about this, and I guess this was the sort of compromise wording to put in the absence of anything specific.
I'd like 2 paragraphs explaining it, yeah. But I guess that'll do. Are you okay, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, let's go on to chapter 6 if nobody else has anything, because I've got,
Put them in order?
no.
Okay. Fine.
Okay.
Where are we off to? 6?
6.
Chapter 6, just because I want to make sure we accomplish it today. And first of all, I don't know why they're both together. I would have preferred, I think, dividing this into 2 chapters, one for transportation, one for infrastructure. I don't know if there's a rhyme or reason for that, but we'll just leave it alone since nobody's speaking up. Under the modes of transportation, I wanted to share some thoughts with you that I did not watch all the planning commission meetings. I watched a fair amount of them. So maybe you can help me whether some things that I made note of were omitted or omitted intentionally or overlooked or are not worthy of even putting in the CDP. And that's a couple things. And if you recall, in January 2020, Jolly Trolley Transit Company, already providing intra-city transportation and intercity transportation on fixed loops, presented a proposal for the Rehoboth Beach Shuttle, providing a community transit service using classic open-air trolleys on a fixed loop route within the city with 13 designated stops. Similar to it was not well received by the public, particularly among those living along the route or living near the proposed designated fixed stops. Additionally, the commissioners were not receptive to operational costs, so the concept was dropped. Again, I don't know whether it was overlooked, should be in there, should be outside the CDP. The second item is later that same year, November 2020, a proposed intracity public transit system under the name of Freebie was introduced and discussed by the commissioners. Freebie offered a small extended golf cart type public transportation option with door-to-door on-demand pickup within a designated perimeter in the city. Ultimately is not well received by the public, particularly among those living along the route or living under the proposed, near the proposed designated fixed stops. Additionally, the commissioners were not receptive to funding the startup or operations, and so the concept was dropped. Excuse me, I mentioned these because there are places throughout the chapter, and I think other chapters, that mention shuttle or transportation systems and that we should investigate other systems. So that's Jolly Trolley, new routing, and Freebie routing. My third item has to do that, in my opinion, and actually the city managers too, I believe, that we need to address the proliferation of private transit systems utilizing small transport vehicles, similar to extended golf carts designed to ferry individuals from point A to point B. Such transport vehicles are usually under the ownership of individual businesses, typically hotels or accommodations businesses, and are used to transport their patrons from the accommodations business location to the beach or other locations with the city. Specific concerns might need investigation as the number of these private shuttles grows. Proliferation of the shuttles, adding to traffic congestion at intersections and stoplights and stop points, locations of and appropriateness of stops, by example, within residential neighborhoods and or within commercial areas. Beach stops are typically located at streets ends, requiring U-turns to exit the area and can cause congestion. And safety issues, idling concerns, awaiting passenger pickup, congestions are all potential concerns for discussion. Currently, buses shall only use the convention hall parking lot as a drop-off point within the city. That's in chapter 250. In other words, they're not allowed to drop off elsewhere within the city, including any locations closer to the beach. Therefore, any hotels that want to try to use buses would have to drop them off at the convention hall and might decide to change to these small private shuttles. And then I think we need to also examine definitions of the different modes of transportation. So I have a potential action item, and that would be to investigate how to use, investigate how the use of private transit systems impact residential and commercial neighborhoods with respect to traffic congestion, check compatibility of use of transit vehicles with existing code, such as Chapter 250 parking restrictions, terminals, drop-off areas, et cetera, and develop policy for use of such small transit systems with regard to usage on city streets, permitted drop-off points, et cetera. That's absolutely needs to be refined, but again, I put it out there that I see an omission. And whether we put it in the CDP or not, I will intend in the near future to bring it up on our agenda because it is a growing problem that I would like to have resolved and studied before next summer.
By the time we get to our next CDP, I'll bet that autonomous vehicles will be darn near universal. And they'll almost by definition be smaller. So it's fun to think about that too.
My last note is just, I'm trying to recall correctly, maybe somebody can help me. In the current CDP, I thought there was mention of concern for where private transport systems originating outside the city and targeting discharge points at the beach and commercial locations in the city was mentioned, that it was a concern. Now, maybe we took care of that because we said if you're a bus, you've got to park at the convention hall. But I don't know that we've defined bus adequately because, I think it says motor coaches. And to me, that's different than a small bus, school bus or something like that. So one way or another, I think we need to address it. Whether it goes in here is up to majority here.
A couple of related things, Mayor. I think it's worth putting in the circular proposal that we had talked about with Jolly Trolley. I know Lewis is just about to institute a service like that. So it would be interesting to see what happens with that in the next year or two. But I think the discussion that we had and the evaluation of it is worthy to talk about in the transportation section. Also related to the golf carts and loading and unloading zones, one thing we've not mentioned in here is more and more people that live in the surrounding areas are using Uber and Lyfts and other ride-sharing services that come into town, and I don't think we've identified that at all. Or I know years ago it was talked about identifying ride-sharing drop-off and loading areas within town. I don't think we ever did anything with that, but I think that's also an area that needs to be highlighted.
That might marry with my third proposal that has to do with including discussion about these private shuttles. Because we've got more and more hotels going up outside of town, and they can certainly bring extended golf carts into town also. So, and if I recall, somewhere in the back of here, there's recommendations by the Environmental Committee when the survey was done, and it may also mention motor vehicles or shuttles. I can't remember. Might have been before your time. Okay.
My time.
Okay.
Mayor, let me ask a quick question about and I'm confused about how you're going to put in the Jolly Trolley and the freebie. Are you going to put in there as proposals that were rejected, or are you going to put in there that we're still considering shuttles, but that these proposals didn't meet the need, or what? Or what?
Well, just I kind
Just
of
putting it as background, or what?
well, it's remember back farther in here. Maybe we'll go when we go through it. Maybe we can find it. It indicates investigate alternative modes of travel and everything. But I think it's value to know that twice now, not once, but twice, we have discussed it, and yes, we've rejected it. I'm trying to be subtle
Well,
word
except that,
rejection.
but I agree. When Commissioner Snowski mentioned the one in Lewis, when I first heard about the one in Lewis, I have to tell you, I was jealous because they seem to manage to do, but there are some real differences between what they're doing and what our proposals were, part of which was cost. You know, they're doing this sort of trial run. They got these decommissioned buses from Del Dart. There are a lot of things about that. And there was a large part, at least in my mind, the proposals that we rejected, a lot of it was cost. So I wouldn't want to see us throw out the entire concept just because those two were rejected. I still think it's a valid concept, but it needs a lot of work. And there are a lot of problems with not just cost, but that was one of the issues.
No, but I guess I would like to see it in there to know that we've studied them and we've rejected them for certain reasons.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying we touch the action items
Okay,
that
that's
say,
fine. That's fine.
continue to look at them.
Yep.
In fact, you heard my third one suggests an action item that we do investigate private shuttles,
Yes,
private
yes.
shuttles
okay, yeah.
that are intracity.
Okay.
Do we know how many are you utilizing Uber and Lyft right now coming into our city? Do we have any way to get a handle on that?
I see him a lot.
I do know on the weekends that they bring down drivers from Philadelphia, Wilmington, because I take it quite a bit. And most of the drivers are not from here. They actually have to bring drivers in because there's such a demand, particularly on the big weekends.
So do we need to evaluate whether Uber falls under a taxi and has to be licensed and all that?
There was that case in Dune, remember a few years ago? I don't think I don't think we can license
Right, I
them.
think there's something on that that's already been decided. I don't recall exactly the details, but I do remember that.
If you read next door, you'll hear a lot of references to how expensive they're getting to be, but you just don't know. But Commissioner, you were saying that there is heavy utilization coming from the big cities.
Yeah, the last three drivers I had, one was from Philly, one was from Baltimore, and one came up from Ocean City, Maryland.
Coming from the airport.
No, just working here for the
Oh,
weekend.
just around town?
Because there's such demand. There was such demand for it.
There's got to be a way to get a handle on that. Do they have a central assignment location when?
No.
I'll be darned. Okay.
I don't know if maybe the city manager could contact them and ask if there's any data they have as to, I mean, they know how many rides we're taking here because they have to submit, and there's a,
Data does exist.
right, there's a share, there's a fee share.
But it's worth trying.
So if possible, since we're trying to resolve things today, if it's possible, I'd like any additional feedback on inclusion of Jolly Trolley and Ride Freebie or Freebie in there. And then secondly, do we mention the proliferation of private transit systems? Again, I'm willing to keep it out, but I will likely put it on an agenda. And do any of those changes you think rise to the level of having to go to plus?
I think that if we include information on the review that you've already done, it's a fact that it occurred. The looking at that broader side of it, I think that has the potential, but I was looking through the plus comments to see if there was a way that we could relate it to one of the comments that came to us from Del Dot or DART, and they did have a few comments. If the town has a vision of improved DART service, it should be mentioned, but maybe we can broaden that to, address transit more broadly, something of that nature as a response. I think it just depends on the way that we might craft the language that's used.
Well, I think it's important enough that it comes in front of the commissioners, that it doesn't necessarily need to be in front of the CDP. Does anybody have a pleasure? We just include the write-ups about Jolly Trolley proposal and the freebie proposal. Maybe we add a little write-up about the concern about Ubers or something, although that might trigger something too. But the proliferation of these small golf cart vehicles, if you're okay, we'll just leave it off and put that on a separate agenda. I see one nodding hand, two nodding heads.
Because that's a much bigger issue, I think, the amount of golf carts lately on the streets. I don't think it's part of this, right?
Page 623, 6.3. Your first paragraph there, 2020 average AADT and 10-year historic council, all state-maintained roadways are available in an interactive web-based virtual thing. The 2020 AADT for Rehoboth Avenue carries an average, or maybe it could be on average, it's ambiguous. 24,323 vehicles. What is the time frame for that? Is that per day? 'Cause if it is, I'd like per day or whatever the time frame.
It's an annual daily traffic.
This is an average of 24,323. That's an annual?
It's
Daily
but
average?
it's daily, but it's annual. The average is annual.
Average annual daily. Okay, so I thought we needed to add per day, but I see if I slow down and read AADT, then maybe that's sufficient.
That measure represents the total volume of vehicle traffic of a highway or road for 1 year divided by 365 days. So that's included in the definitions appendix as well.
I guess I'd like per day just because the very next line says per day. Page 6.4, the 3 bullets. These are multiple intersection improvements. Lake Avenue, 3rd Street. This is Lake Avenue improvement. The first bullet's fine. The second bullet, I think, should have Maryland Avenue and removed. Because we're talking about 2nd Street from Olive to Rehoboth Avenue. And you help me on that. And then the third bullet should be Olive Avenue and median. Do you agree with the second bullet? Yeah. 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, 6.5 on those 4 bullets, Evan. This has to do with the paving program. Should Maryland Avenue be added? I thought that they paved that at the same time they paved Olive.
Lauren, I think these comments incorporate the comments that Kevin and I provided to you, correct?
They would, which have not been incorporated into the draft number 7.
They have been, but
They have not.
they have not been. Okay. We'll have to take a look at that, Mayor.
Evan, also, although it's not a city paving program, but in the fall of this year, DelDOT is scheduled to pave Rehoboth Avenue, right? Is that worthy for this?
I don't know quite yet because we don't have the details. So I'd be reluctant to put that in and then some of the details change and timing change. And that may have been addressed in some of the comments that we've already provided to Lauren as well.
6.5, 6.6, waterways, water taxi, eco tours, a switchback boardwalk structure and dock. Pier juts out 90 degrees from the shore, so what we really have is a dock. 6.7, Under Dart Bus, the second paragraph, it says Route 201. I think it would be helpful to say Bus Route 201. And also, just a general comment throughout the documents, there's some really good illustrations, and here's some on page 6-7. My preference would be that they be full pages, just so they're readable. And that applies to many, many others in the document. I'll probably highlight some later as we go through certain sections. And I realize that adds to it, but since we already hit 300 pages, what's another 20?
But that's a very valid, in my opinion, it's a very valid observation. Some of these maps have phenomenal detail, and we need to be able to see it.
6-8, I have nothing. 6-9, I have two things in the first paragraph. From May 15th, September 15th annually, parking in the cities by permit or via meters only. Parking permits are enforced from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and metered spaces
Oh, species.
require payment. And then Evan is our current, I know we updated the code there. It says parking vehicles longer than 22 feet, 3 foot is restricted. Is that,
correct.
that's the current one?
That's correct, yep.
We're good on that. Very good.
Now, Mayor, I know we were going to discuss either at the end of the season, parking again.
Yes, correct.
So would we go in and change this, or what would the process be if we decided the dates were different than this?
Well, I think we have to go by what it is now.
Right.
And we're not constrained.
Okay, okay.
Even this force of law thing, we're not constrained adhering to it. Correct?
I think that's correct. I mean, think about
That wasn't full-throated.
Think
I
about
mean,
that,
that was.
yeah, well,
That'd be terrible. All that we can't, anything we say, we can't change.
Mayor, I'm sorry, backing up just one page.
Page 6-8.
Yeah, in that section, this, I guess, is a question for Commissioner Gay. Is the Chamber of Commerce still doing the employee transportation out of the elementary school lot? And is
You know,
that?
I need to talk to Carol about that. I'm not sure what they decide to do this year. They're not doing it this year, right? Did she say she wasn't?
Yeah, as far as I know, they're not.
Yeah, I know that they didn't get many takers on it last year, and they talked about not doing it, but I don't think I asked her that specific question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
She said that? She told you that?
This was back in March. They talked about it.
All right, that's what.
The 6-9. Oh, I had something on map 7. I don't know where that is. This references map 7.
Oh, so the maps aren't in the chapter, right?
The maps are at the end of the chapter in the full PDF.
Right, okay, yeah.
Depending
Yep,
on
yep.
the version, there may be a no map PDF just because of size.
Where was I, folks?
Trying to
6-9.
find
6-9. So I guess pedestrian and bicycle facilities. It indicates, map 7 on page 6-9 shows the sidewalk inventory. This inventory provides a snapshot of connectivity and should be used to update. I guess I was looking at this as, is it supposed to show an ID discontiguous sidewalks? I wasn't sure what some of the purpose was because it's not accurate. The sidewalks are not accurate, so you cannot use it to show discontiguous sidewalks. The 6-10 continues with discontiguous sidewalks. I think there ought to be a separate map of discontiguous sidewalk, or if you modify map 7, it needs to be accurate, that's all. The, 611. 611 is one where these two small little diagrams, I think, can be enlarged. I think you can do it with a big enlargement of the one and maybe instead of the small one. But I'd really like to be able to read it with my old eyes. Page 612, I have nothing for the CDP other than I highlighted for myself the reiteration over and over from the last CDP about discontiguous sidewalks and gaps and all that thing, that something that I would like to prioritize in the future. 613, really don't have anything new. 614, junction and breakwater trail extension. Starting with the second sentence, the trail provides a pathway. Trail provides a pathway along a former railroad line from the southern end of Cape and Lopin State Park. Park has an E in it that needs to be removed. So there's from and park. ADA transition. At the bottom, it mentions Gordon Pond Trail. The southern end of the trail begins at Gordon Pond, parking located in Cape and Lopin State Park. It mentions that there is a state park entrance fee. Parking lot with restrooms available at the cost of the state park entrance fees. I meant to look it up. Does anybody know if you ride your bike into the park or you walk into the park, is there an entrance fee?
No.
Okay, so maybe on the end of page 614, right before that sentence where a 500 space parking lots are, we can say free access, some wordsmithing, free access to bicycles and pedestrians. 615, nothing. 616, dead center in the page, beginning of the paragraph, climate change effects. Climate change effects are a large part of the TAMP. Is it are, is it were, is it? Who's the grammarian?
Which page?
Page 616, dead center, starts under Transportation Asset Management Plan, climate change effects. Or maybe it was, read it there, maybe it was is correct. Climate change effects,
No, it should be,
I think it may have originally been climate change was, and at some point effects was added.
so we just need to correct the tense.
do that or take out the fix.
Maybe, yeah.
Just climate change
Change
is
is a large part of
a
it,
large
right?
part.
That's fine, just go back to,
And the last sentence has were in it. Maybe they've changed and redone it.
well, where is correct, actually. Additionally, climate resiliency considerations were included in the project development. 617, two-thirds of the way down the page, there is a mention of the composition of a TMT, depends on the nature of the event or incident. TTMTs respond to planned events. There's just an extra T there. 618, nothing. 619, nothing. 620. again, it mentioned, I'm just making notes to myself, enhanced maintenance of sidewalks, enhanced maintenance of sidewalks. Something, again, I would like to do. Action item A is adopt a complete streets policy. I agree with that. I've taken a course through IPA on complete streets, and I just don't know if we have guts to do it on certain streets. There are particular streets that it would work very well on, but again, for instance, Henlopen and Columbia are ones that may be for consideration. Unfortunately, we went through rehab of those streets, or at least Henlopen, when we did the outfall. And we had our opportunity and we didn't do anything. So just a comment, study the feasibility of the city, assuming, that's all right, that's a note for me, future agenda item. Page 6-21. The third paragraph there, I need to call on your memories. In addition, green infrastructure should be added as an important component of infrastructure in the city. Following a discussion at a February 2019 workshop, the mayor and commissioners agreed that the green infrastructure would be added. Did we agree it would be added or considered?
Added. I can go back to that. It was a presentation that Tony Sharp made, and at the end of it, there was a consensus that it would be a component of all city projects moving forward.
Okay, so
And it has been in the sense that, obviously Lake Avenue streetscape, but when the Delaware Avenue restrooms were done, our committee brought that to Liz and said, well, this is a city project. How are we going to add green infrastructure to Delaware Avenue restrooms? And since we couldn't add them immediately there
Right.
because it's so close to the ocean and the size of the structure, they're being added all down that first block of Delaware Avenue.
very good. Well, I wasn't sure if it was added or considered, so we'll leave it as it is. Underwater, the last two sentences under the first paragraph of water talks about city provides service outside its geographical boundary by selling finished water. I'm not sure what unfinished water, but city manager indicated the word treated would replace finished. And also directly underneath that word, the Breezeview community is actually Breezewood. Breezewood, W-O-D.
Clarification
Yeah.
there. Don't we sell directly to Dewey in bulk? It doesn't transfer through the county, does it?
If you own property in Dewey, you pay your bill to the county. And so there, the money circulates through the county.
I thought we sold it to bulk to Dewey, and they in turn billed their citizens.
The county is our customer, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing after Breezewood community is add North Shores plural community. Make it plural and add the word community. 622, 23, 24, 625, the 625 underwater demands, the second paragraph. The city is a tourist destination and the water demand the city experiences varies seasonally. 26, 27, 28, 29. At the top, it talks about mapping wellhead protection areas. Are there some areas outside the city for wells and wellhead protection areas that are not mapped?
We are required to use the latest map data set from DENREC. So that is what is used, that comes specifically from them.
sure we have all of our wells and aquifers mapped.
I just didn't see them here. There's one with the maps and the, here it is here, map number 8. This is map of the wells and wellhead areas only within the city limits or within Henlopen Acres. And I just thought that maybe there should be an addendum map that shows don't we have wells out here? Yeah. So does anybody think that we need to map all the wells?
What is the map number that shows current?
I didn't think so. Just, we have the maps, but whether we put it in the CDP,
Do you think we're okay without it in the CDP?
And these are wellhead protection areas, so that has a specific state connotation and a required local ordinance to address and protect those.
But we have some outside this diagram is my point.
Kevin would know all of them, where they are. Some of them I know. The Lynch's map, if you recall the discussion we had concerning the one where they're building the roundabout up by the BB, we have all those mapped.
The point is, do we want it in the CDP? So you have a no, nobody else has an opinion, so it's a no. Same page, 629, almost dead set in the middle of the paragraph under statewide assessment of wastewater facilities. There's a mention of the Clean Water Advisory Council, and this should be changed as follows. It is intended to encourage dialogue between the water infrastructure, what's it called? Advisory Council. Water Infrastructure Advisory Council. You can put in parentheses, WIAC, comma, formerly CWAC, or Clean Water Advisory, if we even want to mention it. The council, in other words, CWAC was renamed WIAC. Oh, 630, I have nothing. 631, I have nothing. 632. 633. There's no mention about the 2 proposed county partnerships for wastewater. I'm fine with leaving them off, but I just want to point out that it's not in there. Anybody see a need for them? I would suggest that under the second bullet on 633, wastewater treatment plant upgrades phase 4. Phase 4 of the wastewater treatment plant's upgrades are slated to take place in fiscal year 24-25 with anticipated increase in fees to in-town customers. I don't know if you want to keep emphasizing that or not. Anybody? Everybody's getting tired.
I think it's worth mentioning.
Huh? All right. Okay, so with anticipated increase in fees to in-town customers. That's true, it's just in-town customers.
No, it's everybody.
Is our fee going up to the county?
We can't.
We have a contract, we can't make it go up.
Stan, as
Yes, sir.
you had mentioned, though, about the county offer being non-existent in here, whatever, as you have done to memorialize the 2 transportation offers, I think using that same logic, it should be memorialized in the CDP.
Okay. Lauren, what we have is a situation where the Sussex County came to us, 2+ years ago, and with a proposal to take over our wastewater treatment plant so that we were hands-off. And that was disfavored by the citizens, so that failed, if you will. And then within the last year, they came to us with a different proposal, and that was just to buy capacity of our ocean outfall pipe that empties highly treated effluent out into the water in the ocean. And that too was rejected by the council and the people. So there's two very important situations and potential partnerships with the county that everybody would like to, we'll write up something to add to that. Almost done, 6:34, 35. 6:35 is interesting. Municipal separate storm sewer systems. Polluted stormwater runoff is commonly transported through municipal separate storm sewer systems and then often discharged untreated into local water bodies. And then the next four bullets, to me, they have nothing to do with Rehoboth. Or am I reading it wrong? You know, we don't have combined systems. Polluted stormwater is often commonly transported through storm sewer systems. So are they talking
Storm
about,
sewer, not combined. It says
well,
that
see, the
one
word,
of the bullets is
the
not
word
a
sewer should only be used
I don't think,
for
that's
dirty water,
right.
whatever you want to call it.
I don't.
Wastewater.
We don't have I don't think there's been a combined system in the last 50, 60 years.
Well, there is up in Dover.
But one of the
Okay.
criteria is it's not part of a sewage treatment.
No, the MS4s are all separate.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's part of the definition that they're
Yeah.
saying.
But they also have limits and discharge limits. We're just not on that because we're not on the MS4. Our plan is to meet or exceed even those daily limits that, or those discharge limits that MS4 requires of all cities who are under the MS4
Well,
regulation.
how about for this section, I task a city manager with reviewing this and correcting it. I think it's very misleading the way it's written here.
But that's what, MS4, the S4 is because there are 4 words that start with S.
It's municipal separate and sanitary
Otherwise,
sewer
it'd be
system.
MS3.
Well, then, again, the wording's wrong then. To mention MS4 and then say it's discharged untreated in the local bodies.
It is, and
But it is
and
a
there are limits to that, and we're going to have to meet those limits.
But you're saying in your
But we
mind, sewer is
don't,
only one
we
thing.
don't oh, wait a
Is
minute.
that what you're saying?
I need to
The
regroup.
word sewer is commonly associated with
Because we're not testing
Not
yet.
only wastewater. Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Oh,
A
okay.
storm sewer as opposed to a wastewater sewer.
You've talked some sense into me.
Beer.
I was having trouble with discharged untreated, and I thought, no, we don't do that. We're better than that.
Well,
But we are for our
that's true.
waste, and some stormwater.
I mean, the separate is the key word there.
Yeah.
Are you okay with this wording? Okay. City manager says, okay, I'm putting an X through it. Sorry to waste your time.
When you start at municipal separate storm sewer systems, and you read down here, I don't see anything that's incorrect.
No, again, I got stuck on discharge untreated. And I'm thinking, we have storm scepters and all that, but I still don't like the word sewer. I think it's very,
This
Misleading.
write-up's great, by the way, all the way down to the end of 635.
you think sewer should be taken out?
And it's a commonly defined term. I don't think we
Yeah, I
can.
don't think we can. It's a defined term, yeah.
Yeah, I tend to think it misleads because you've got stormwater and then you've got sewerage. Okay, we're done with that. 636.
This is a good
637.
description of the resilient community partnership.
Yep, 637, 638. 638 has to do with solid waste. Under valet trash service, there's a mention, valet trash service is available at additional cost. That only is focusing on the city provided valet trash service. I think that there should be consideration of adding at the end that besides the city, there are also private vendors that offer this service.
Agreed.
Seeing as how the city is probably a minor servicer of that.
Under yard waste, the second sentence is curbside collection by the city or drop off at the, I think it should say city's recycling center, just to make sure that we're not talking about the state recycling center, city's recycling center. And then the next sentence has to do with city leaf collection, starts first Monday, and I'd prefer that it be more descriptive and say city vacuum leaf collection. Page 6-39, I've only got a few more minutes, folks. Days of time there. Under the recycling drop-off center, Evan, if you take a look at that, I think it ought to say at the very end that there are limited hours. It almost implies that it's open all the time, and there are restricted hours. So if you could check into that. Public space recycling, when is it? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Back to recycling on page 39, 639. Boardwalk recycling, my understanding is that's being implemented this year, the summer of 2022.
We're gonna do it if we have manpower.
That was one of the things that I think.
Yeah, I think it's not definitive, and so I think we need to leave it off.
Okay.
The
Last
good-
time I talked to Kevin, it seemed definitive, but I will defer.
The good news is if we leave it off and then we implement it, we get to put a big check by that box. The two more things on this page. Public space recycling, the very first sentence, while the city provides recycling services to residents and property owners, the cities offers minimal. The city offers minimal recycling opportunities in public space. And then under compacting stations, the last line under compacting stations says, together these units divert nearly 1,600 gallons of waste. It should really be, together these units divert, wait a minute, sorry. These units are capable of diverting nearly 1,600 gallons or up to. These units are capable of diverting up to 1,600 gallons of waste from local landfills within a 7-month period.
Mayor, they mentioned in there the locations. Would it be, we'd also operate one out on the bike trail?
Oh, yeah. Can you double check that? Because you've added the two at the bike trail, and so we want to extend their locale. 639, 640, it's okay. 641. 641 is where we get into the substance, mentioned sea level rides, streetscape, overhead utilities. The only one that made me pause under the action items is evaluate the feasibility of providing freely accessible, high-quality wireless capacity in public spaces. I don't agree with that. I just wonder if that means we're promoting more antennas around town.
Lauren, just on that same page, under goals, it starts with goal number 4. Are there previous, or is
Yeah,
that
there's
just
The first 3 relate to the transportation
Okay.
section.
okay?
So they're numbered by chapter, but they're in separate sections thematically.
Everybody okay with action item O with the wireless?
Well, I wondered why that was there too, but is this, I get,
You know, look, we had a company come to us, remember many years ago, wireless freebie, Wi-Fi or something. And I think we just never entertained them. But you know, are we gonna, and do you remember their photo illustration of the boardwalk? Antenna, 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 antenna times 30. So I mean, evaluate's a dictate. I don't know that I'm receptive to that.
well, it doesn't say we have to do it. It says we evaluate the feasibility of it.
Yeah, and I would personally say that there's no priority to evaluate it, that we've got a lot of other priorities.
Didn't we already do it and turn them down?
Well, we haven't, no, other than that Wi-Fi, I don't think anybody else has come to us for free Wi-Fi. So the answer is no, we kind of need to start over again. It's just a matter of, like I said, do we want, with all that we went through with the aesthetics of antennas, especially on the boardwalk or anywhere in town, do we really want to promote something in our CDP that says, see, you should evaluate it, and then they try to turn that into a positive.
Remove it then.
I'm sure that major telecommunications companies would like to have 5G be the ultimate and have everybody be able to access that without having to have another provider. And I suspect they'll make that possible once they get fully implemented.
So Ed suggested taking it out. Does anybody else, or else we leave it in? I guess we leave it in. Page 640.
You could add to it and say, you know, evaluate the feasibility of providing freely accessible, high-quality wireless capacity in public spaces in a way that harmonizes the city's aesthetic goals and, you know, telecommunications goals or something.
That almost gives them more power when they come in front of us. That gives us more power because now we've said we want to make it happen.
Let's leave it out.
I would leave it out.
The whole thing? Jay, what'd you say?
The whole reference.
Okay, well, now we've got
I know, I would agree with that.
4, so we're going to take that out.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
doesn't say we can't evaluate it in the
Correct.
future, but it doesn't force us.
correct.
Right, exactly.
Correct.
Yes.
642, I have nothing, and that's all. What is the pleasure of the commissioners? I thought we had a great session so far. You know, we have a second meeting scheduled for today at 2 o'clock. We can certainly, if there was thought that we could, we're doing good, we could cancel it. I would suggest that we go ahead and do it so that at the end of that meeting, we can better evaluate what our future meetings are. Because again, we're on a deadline here. We still don't know whether we need to submit something by June 1st or not. I'm hopeful that we don't, but I think we need to be cautious. And with that, are we okay to go back to, so that is a separate meeting, and we'll just start it and pick some of the next chapters, again, leaving for later, possibly a future meeting, the implementation, the executive summary thing. Is there any further additional comment?
3 and 6, so we have to do 2, 4, 5.
Well, two is,
4, 5. That's back, that's all history, yeah. It's
yeah,
not gonna have
yeah,
much. That's
yeah,
all history.
yeah.
So we have to do 4, 5, and 7.
7,
Correct.
7 and 8, and what was?
8 is implementation.
8 is, yeah, right.
So that's the one we talked about doing in concert with 1. So then we have 4, 5, and 7, right?
We're,
For next on our plate.
Yes,
Plate,
that's what it
yes,
is,
yes.
yes.
Sounds good. With that, if there's no further comment,
I'm sorry, I missed that.
yes, we are.
Okay, fine.
Yes, we are. So with that, this meeting is adjourned at 12:21 PM. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
So we're back at 2. We're back at
2. I'm just